Welcome back, everyone. I want to sincerely thank each and every one of you for your incredible support of the channel. And I hope you all enjoy this manhwa as much as I did. Now, it's your turn to suggest any requests you have for future content. Let me know in the comments. Without further ado, let's dive into the manhwa. The story begins in the kingdom of Yin, within the bustling city of Luyun, where a grand auction is underway at the Pavilion of 10,000 Treasures. Rumors swirl among attendees that martial arts techniques from the sacred land of the five elements are on the block. One skeptic questions the truth of these rumors, noting that even a yellow-rank treasure could overpower practitioners from Luyun. Eager to obtain such a technique, a man in red draws attention to a figure on stage, identifying him as Lin Yunka, the youngest son of the wealthy and prestigious Lin family of Luyun. He challenges a man in blue, questioning how he plans to compete with this rich young contender. Confident in his wealth and status, Lin Yunka boldly declares that no one dares to outbid him in this auction. The auctioneer, Nalin, takes the stage and introduces the first treasure, a superior yellow-rank technique known as the mountain-moving technique, originating from the sacred land of the five elements. Bidding commences at 300,000 gold coins, with increments of at least 10,000 gold coins. Quickly, bids escalate to 350,000, then 380,000, and finally 400,000. However, Lin Yunka stuns the crowd by bidding 3 million, dismissing other bidders as insignificant. His bid, 10 times higher than the current bid, leaves the audience in awe. Nalin pauses, inviting anyone brave enough to challenge Lin Yunka's exorbitant offer. The scene unfolds in the Pavilion of 10,000 Treasures, where doubts linger among attendees about challenging the Lin family's dominance. Suddenly, a daring figure raises their hand and offers an astonishing 30 million gold coins, challenging anyone to surpass his bid. This audacious bidder is Yifan, the protagonist, stunning the crowd with an offer that exceeds the initial value 100-fold, enough to purchase the entire city of Luyun. Lin Yunka, visibly enraged, demands to know who dares to outbid him. With no further challengers emerging, Nalin declares Yifan's 30 million bid as the winner. An elderly advisor counsels Lin Yunka against letting his emotions rule him, reminding him of their broader objectives. Though irritated, Lin Yunka acknowledges the advice while asserting his independence. As the auction concludes and people begin to disperse, Nalin announces the final treasure of the day, the Celestial Ascension Order. Bidding starts at 2 million gold coins, with increments no less than 100,000. The crowd is mesmerized by the legendary artifact, the Celestial Ascension Order. The elderly advisor informs Lin Yunka that Lady Ziner has coveted this item, suggesting its acquisition could enhance his standing with the Lord of the city. Curious about its significance, Yifan learns that the Celestial Ascension Order grants a mortal the rare opportunity to cultivate in the sacred land, bypassing conventional conditions. Eligibility requires being under 20 years old and meeting specific cultivation criteria for the entrance test. Yifan realizes the order is akin to a priceless opportunity in this world. Lin Yunka, assuming Yifan had exhausted his funds with the 30 million bid, underestimates him as a mere country bumpkin seeking attention. Determined to regain the spotlight, Lin Yunka raises his bid to 5 million. However, Yifan astounds everyone by immediately counterbidding 100 million, confidently questioning the crowd's hearing in a sarcastic tone. Without hesitation, Nalin concludes the auction, emphasizing that payment must be made in full immediately, without credit or installment plans. Yifan requests a private room to arrange the substantial payment, while Lin Yunka instructs his elderly companion to investigate Yifan. In the privacy of the room, Nalin assures Yifan he has time, with her team waiting outside. Alone, Yifan removes a ring and tosses it, transporting himself to another place, his home in the real world. There, he prepares to procure goods, explaining his ability to travel between two worlds. He reminisces about how it all began with a cooking accident, where his blood touched a family heirloom, transporting him to a fantastical realm where the strong soar and the weak watch from below. In this world, a cabbage he held transformed into a valuable crystal-clear vegetable spirit, fetching 10 million gold coins at market, a turning point in his fortunes. After a month of navigating between worlds, Yifan has mapped out its structure. The Eastern River, Southern Desert, Western Sea, Northern Plains, and the Central Region are its 5 main divisions. In addition to these regions, independent areas such as the Ancestral Demon Caves, Immortal Tomb, and Celestial Cave of Spiritual Ruins exist within the fantastical realm. The Southern Desert and Western Sea are territories primarily inhabited by demon races, including the Ancestral Demon Cave. In contrast, the Eastern River, Central Region, and Northern Plains are predominantly occupied by humans. The three races, humans, beastfolk, and demons, have been locked in continuous conflict for centuries, despite maintaining a fragile facade of peaceful coexistence. Among humans, martial artists hold immense respect unlike common folk. They are classified into two main realms based on their cultivation levels and their ability to transform spiritual energy into different forms. The physical cultivation realm spans 7 levels: body tempering realm, bone fortification realm, internal strength realm, blood transfusion realm, marrow cleansing realm, enlightenment realm, and profound heavenly realm. Meanwhile, the spiritual cultivation realm comprises 10 levels: spiritual energy realm, astral spiritual realm, spiritual sea realm, heavenly realm, returned realm, golden core realm, spiritual manifestation realm, divine transcendence realm, and wandering void realm. The workings of the ancestral ring, crucially illuminated through the protagonist's continuous introspection, add another layer of mystery and significance to the narrative. In this universe, only plants or animals weighing under 200 grams can travel between worlds. All other items are unable to make the journey. Conversely, if an object from the alternate world is brought to Earth, it inexplicably transforms into worthless trash. Luckily, the ancestral ring possesses a useful function for changing clothing, which proves invaluable to the protagonist. Returning to Ifan's perspective, after his flamboyant display at the auction, he realizes he has only a few vegetables left at home and urgently needs more supplies. Spotting something outside his window, an idea strikes him. The next day, in the ancestral world, guards inform Nailin that Ifan has been secluded in his room for an entire day without emerging. She instructs them to wait a bit longer. One guard remarks that Ifan is dressed plainly and appears to lack wealth, which raises suspicion about his sudden appearance. Nailin deliberates briefly and decides not to wait any longer, entering Ifan's room. However, as soon as the door opens, she finds herself face to face with Ifan, who promptly reassures her that it's not New Year's yet, so there's no need for such commotion. Nailin steps back, asking Ifan if he has the coins prepared. Blushing, she wonders how he dares to take advantage of her, emphasizing that if he doesn't pay today, there will be consequences. Ifan begins to explain that acquiring gold coins isn't straightforward when the guards suddenly erupt in curses, labeling him a swindler. Without warning, Ifan produces a stunning flower. He declares their interest in the flower, catching Nailin's attention. She identifies it as a dragon tail herb, renowned for its miraculous ability to heal external injuries and extend the lifespan of the uninjured, making it an invaluable spiritual herb. Ifan then asks how much it's worth. Undeterred, he reveals more treasures: a basket containing several dragon tail herbs, each with miraculous healing properties, a blue spirit flower promising eternal beauty, and a 1,000-year rootless branch, an exceedingly rare find, all considered priceless worldly treasures. Nailin exclaims that even a few of these flowers would fetch a considerable sum, but a basketful like Ifan's could easily be valued at 200 million gold coins. She demands to know where Ifan obtained such treasures. He casually explains that he collected what he thought were ordinary dry weeds and leaves while assisting a janitor. Delighted, Nailin invites Ifan to discuss further. She admits to having traveled the world extensively but has never encountered such a remarkable opportunity before. She expresses her eagerness not to let it slip away and asks Ifan if he would consider selling all these herbs to her. Ifan, aware of the worth of each dragon tail herb at 40 million, asserts that if Nailin wants the entire collection, she'll need to compensate him accordingly. After striking a deal with Nailin, Ifan leaves with a backpack filled with treasures from her facilities. As he departs, he playfully shouts back to Nailin that she still owes him. She replies nonchalantly that he can return whenever he likes. Back inside, the guard informs Nailin with astonishment that Ifan has taken all the treasures from the first floor of the hall. Nailin dismisses his concern, calling it a long-term investment and remarking that someone who treats such valuable treasures almost casually must be a unique individual. Meanwhile, in another location, Ifan encounters two would-be thieves who attempt to rob him. With a confident smirk, Ifan challenges them, asking if they really think they can take him. When one of the thieves attacks, Ifan shouts a command and disappears, leaving the bewildered thief empty-handed. Back on Earth, Ifan reflects that he was fortunate not to have used his daily travel to the other world yet that day. He acknowledges the harsh reality of the other world, where people often resort to killing for robbery. Clarifying for those unfamiliar, the ancestral ring permits travel to the other world once per day. Reflecting on recent events, Ifan realizes he overlooked many precautions, such as wearing a mask during the attention-grabbing auction. He anticipates facing more challenges in the future and resolves to learn martial arts for self-defense. Previously, Yifan had struggled with the complexities of martial arts techniques from the other world. However, upon revisiting his book, he discovers a newfound simplicity in understanding the techniques. He realizes that if he can bring these martial arts to Earth, they could be easily mastered. Determined to become a supreme martial arts master, Yifan diligently practices the mountain-moving technique over the next half-month, supplementing his training with earth-brought food. His progress is astonishing, as he quickly strengthens his body. Despite appearing to be at the initial stage of the body-tempering realm, his physical power rivals that of martial artists in the internal strength realm. With a punch capable of exerting 2 tons of force and fortified internal organs, Yifan feels he has taken his first significant step into the martial arts world. However, aware that his early exposure at the auction may attract unwanted attention, Yifan resolves to intensify his efforts. Suddenly, he hears cries for help and spots 6 people under attack by wolves from his vantage point up a tree. Facing the tough wolves, Yifan observes as one of them lunges towards a person, only to be swiftly incapacitated by Yifan's punch, sending it sinking into the ground in confusion. Witnessing this, the people and the remaining wolves appear bewildered. Seeing an opportunity to test his newfound martial arts techniques, Yifan welcomes the wolves' aggression. As the wolves attack, Yifan channels his skills and unleashes a devastating hurricane-like strike, sending the wolves flying and swiftly resolving the conflict. Impressed and grateful, the people around him praise Yifan, hailing him as incredible. Elsewhere, the sounds of powerful blows echo through the air as Yifan continues to train. He demonstrates his strength by effortlessly knocking down trees with powerful slaps, including slicing one in half with a diagonal strike. The young girl from earlier arrives, marveling at Yifan's feats and expressing gratitude for the trees he felled, which will provide wood for the Mu family's village. Yifan modestly downplays his actions, recalling the girl's father, Muti, who introduces himself as the village chief's son. Muti sincerely thanks Yifan for saving his daughter and the villagers, acknowledging that the Mu family owes him a debt of gratitude. Despite recognizing Yifan's martial prowess, Muti cautions that the mountain remains perilous, emphasizing the safety of the Mu family village. Moved by Muti's gratitude and invitation, Yifan agrees to accompany them to the Mu family village. After being invited to the Mu family village following his heroic encounter with the wolves, Yifan respectfully accepts, seeing it as an opportunity for secluded cultivation of the mountain-moving technique. Over the past days, Yifan successfully progresses from the body-tempering realm to the peak of the bone fortification realm. However, he now faces a cultivation bottleneck. Recognizing the need to advance to the internal strength realm, which strengthens the internal organs to the point of digesting stone, Yifan recalls that according to the mountain-moving technique, consuming the internal organs of high-level beasts can facilitate this breakthrough. He considers a plan to travel to Earth, purchase meat, and transport it to the other world for this purpose. Muti calls Ruoruo, signaling their readiness to go to the market, and invites Yifan along since he has free time. After a brief moment of contemplation, Yifan agrees. Upon arriving at the market in Luyun, Muti sells wolf pelts and boar tusks, expressing gratitude to Yifan for enabling the successful sale of the wolf pelts. Yifan humbly brushes off the thanks. Ruoruo then invites Yifan to join her in purchasing crystallized pumpkins. After Muti finishes packing up, Yifan suggests they depart together, but Muti insists they go ahead without him and Ruoruo. Ruoruo departs happily while Yifan remains puzzled by Muti's apparent disregard for his daughter's safety. The young girl speaks of Yifan in the third person, praising him, though he understands her intent. Yifan gently encourages her to leave to avoid worrying her father. However, as they proceed, they encounter a commotion ahead, where Ruoruo notices it involves her father. Pushing through the crowd, Yifan sees Muti and others from the Mu village being surrounded and mistreated. Ruoruo bursts into tears at the sight of her father and uncle being kicked and abused. Ignoring Muti's warnings, she rushes forward, demanding to know why they are being attacked. A crazed man attempts to kick Ruoruo, but Yifan intervenes swiftly, gripping the man's leg with such force that it snaps. Confronting the aggressor, Yifan questions how someone in the advanced stage of body tempering could ruthlessly attack a young girl. The man, writhing in pain, demands to know who Yifan is and how he dares to intervene. Defying the man's calls for retaliation, Yifan effortlessly dispatches several attackers with precise strikes. He stands over a fallen man, challenging him defiantly. The defeated man pleads for mercy, admitting he wouldn't dare continue the confrontation. In the background, a bald man silently observes the scene unfold. As Yifan confronts the man he subdued, he demands to know why they were attacking people on the street. Threatening a severe consequence for a wrong answer, Ifan's firm demeanor prompts Ruoruo's uncle to intervene, explaining that these men are from the city lord's mansion and cautioning against provoking them further. Turning his attention to Yin, Ifan seeks clarification on the events. Meanwhile, Ruoruo checks on her uncle's leg, concerned for his well-being. Suddenly, Zhou Heng, the bald man who identifies himself as the head guard of the city lord's mansion, steps forward to address Ifan's inquiry. Zhou Heng accuses Yin of colliding with the young lady's carriage and subsequently arguing with her, which led to the altercation. A voice from the crowd counters, asserting that it was the carriage that lost control and struck Yin first. They claim Yin and his companions were attacked without reason when they sought an explanation. Muti restrains Li, advising him to stay silent and accept responsibility for the incident. Muti kneels on the ground and admits that the mistake was theirs. He asks the young lady to forgive them, since his brother's leg was broken. The protagonist thinks that this girl is the eldest daughter of the city lord. Since ancient times, people have not dared to fight with the nobility. Ifan understands why Muti doesn't want to mess with them. The girl begins to open the curtain and says that since they are wrong, they must pay for their mistakes. This girl's name is Lanziner. She orders the bald man to cut off each of their legs to serve as a warning to others. They are shocked by how cruel this girl is. She says dismissively that they will only lose their legs while she lost her good mood. She tells the bald man to cut. The bald man says that if it's what she wants, then he will do it. Zhou Heng tries to cut one of the guys, but the protagonist holds his sword with his hand. Zhou Heng is shocked. Then Yifan tries to slap the bald man, but he manages to dodge. Zhou Heng retreats a bit. Yifan asks the fallen man if he is okay, and the man says yes. Ruoruo is crying, afraid that Yifan will get hurt. Lan wonders where this boy came from and how he dares to go against her. Suddenly, the protagonist advances, and the bald man tries to defend himself with his sword. But the protagonist strikes the middle of it, breaking it effortlessly. The bald man wonders how this boy broke his sword with a single strike. The confrontation intensifies as Ifan, the protagonist, presses his advantage with another powerful punch. Despite the bald man's claims of invulnerability due to his city lord-awarded armor, Ifan's relentless assault breaks through, disrupting the bald man's defense and sending him flying. Concerned onlookers check on the bald man's condition, remarking that it's a day for those with sharp eyes. A nearby girl warns them to lower their voices to avoid trouble. Suddenly, the bald man rises in fury, unleashing his bloody chi release fortification skill. This alarms Ifan, who now faces the bald man's furious tiger fist technique, enduring several punishing blows. Through the exchange, despite taking hits, Ifan realizes a critical detail: the bald man's observation that Ifan lacks formal martial arts training. Acknowledging that he is only at the beginning stage of the blood transfusion realm, Ifan calmly notes the bald man's superiority in realms but criticizes his actual combat effectiveness as weak. Ifan's punch lands solidly, twisting the bald man's jaw, prompting concern from those around as they check on his condition again. Witnessing Ifan's unexpected strength despite his lack of martial arts training leaves the onlookers astounded. Meanwhile, Ruoruo approaches Ifan to ensure he's alright, and he reassures her, noting that his physical body seems to have naturally enhanced upon entering this world, surpassing the limits of the realm's inhabitants. Amidst the escalating tension, Lan commands the guards to mobilize from the city lord's mansion to arrest everyone in the crowd and imprison them in the dungeon. Her orders are met with immediate compliance and affirmations of loyalty from the guards. Muti warns Ifan about the consequences, as historically no one has emerged from the dungeon unscathed. Suddenly, Miss Nailon arrives on the scene, addressing Lan with pointed criticism. She accuses Lan of abusing her power, trampling civilians, and acting with impunity as if the Yin dynasty has transformed into the Lan family. Lan challenges Nailon's accusations, demanding clarification. Nailon boldly asserts that she witnessed Lan herself mistreating civilians in the streets, highlighting Lan's abuse of authority. Turning her attention to Ifan, Nailon introduces herself, prompting Ifan to request less formality. Ruoruo is impressed by their acquaintance, realizing that Nailon is the proprietor of the 10,000 Treasures Pavilion, the largest merchant institution in Luyun City. Lan, surprised by Nailon's intervention, dismisses her association with what she considers mere riffraff. Nailon firmly asserts that common people are the bedrock of the country, highlighting Lan's repeated disparagement of them despite her status as the eldest lady of Luyun City. She subtly raises the possibility of repercussions if Lan's behavior were to reach the royal city, but denies any overt threat. Lan, understanding the implications of offending the 10,000 Treasures Pavilion, decides to back down to avoid potential trouble and departs, leaving the Mu family safe from further harm. Grateful for Nailon's intervention, Yifan thanks her sincerely. She brushes off his gratitude, insisting it was no trouble. Nalan then directs her attention to tending to the injured, arranging for them to be taken to a guest room for treatment. Curious, Ruoro asks Yifan about his relationship with Nalan, especially given her wealth and beauty. Yifan cryptically responds that she owes him money, much to Ruoro's surprise. Later, Yifan and Nalan sit down for tea. Nalan commends Yifan on advancing to the bone fortification realm, noting that he is exceptionally young to achieve such a feat in the history of Luyun City. Yifan dismisses her praise, remarking that without her timely intervention, extracting the group safely would have been much more challenging. Yifan listens as Nalan describes various martial arts techniques available at the pavilion. She introduces the mountain-piercing finger technique first, a low yellow rank technique capable of allowing a practitioner to pierce mountains and rocks with a finger when mastered. Despite its power, Yifan passes on this option. Nalan continues, mentioning the black sand palm next. It's an intermediate yellow-ranked martial art known for its proficiency in manipulating and launching condensed black sand at opponents. Interested, Yifan considers it, but decides to explore other options as well. Next, Nalan presents the Jade Cloud Swordsmanship, another intermediate yellow technique that focuses on fluid sword movements resembling drifting clouds. She explains its elegance and effectiveness in both offense and defense. Yifan takes note of this technique, but remains undecided. Lastly, Nalan mentions the Heaven's Thunder Palm, a high yellow rank technique. It's renowned for its ability to channel and release thunderous energy through palm strikes, capable of shattering rocks and causing powerful shockwaves. Yifan is intrigued by its potential and decides to inquire further about it. With these options laid out before him, Yifan ponders which martial arts technique will best suit his goals and aspirations in mastering martial arts in this world. Yifan smiles as Ruoro expresses her joy over the dress he bought for her. Nalan joins in, mentioning to Ruoro that Yifan picked it out especially for her, adding to her excitement. Ruoro thanks Yifan profusely and immediately tries on the dress, admiring how it looks on her. As they continue their conversation, Yifan asks Nalan about the training requirements for the Shadow Fist technique. Nalan explains that even for a talented individual, mastering the technique would typically require 2 to 3 months of dedicated practice. Yifan nods thoughtfully, mentally preparing himself for the commitment ahead. Ruoro, still beaming with happiness, asks Yifan when he plans to start practicing the new martial art technique. Yifan tells her he'll begin soon, once he's familiarized himself with the basics. Ruoro offers her assistance and pledges to support him in any way she can. With the dress admired and spirits high, Yifan and Ruoro enjoy a moment of camaraderie and shared enthusiasm, while Nalan watches fondly, appreciating their bond. But their moment is interrupted by a man's frantic arrival. He shouts that Ruoro's uncle is in critical condition. The doctor steps forward to explain the severity of the situation, casting a pall of sadness over everyone present. The man on the bed looks visibly distressed. Nalan and the old man share in the sorrow, and Ruoro and the others are deeply affected as well. The old man somberly explains that without the intervention of a legendary individual possessing great power or the discovery of a miraculous medicine, there is little hope for survival. Amidst the despair, the old man ponders aloud where in their world they might find someone with the knowledge of miraculous herbs. At that moment, the protagonist, standing quietly in the background, speaks up confidently, stating that he knows where to locate such herbs. Meanwhile, back on Earth, in a small herb store nearing closing time, 2 clerks are wrapping up their day's work when the protagonist enters abruptly. The startled clerk takes in the protagonist's unusual appearance, clearly caught off guard. In the other world, time passes slowly as the group waits anxiously. Ruoro grows increasingly concerned about Yfan's prolonged absence. Late into the night, Yifan returns with the herbs in hand. Everyone in the room is stunned. The old man, visibly moved, examines the herbs closely. He identifies them as the legendary celestial healing herbs, renowned for their miraculous healing properties. These herbs are extremely rare and powerful, capable of curing even the gravest of illnesses. Ruoro and Nalan are amazed at Yfan's resourcefulness and ability to find such extraordinary herbs. The old man asks Yifan where he obtained them, to which Yifan casually replies that he fetched them from his world. This revelation baffles everyone present, as they try to comprehend the concept of traveling between worlds and acquiring such potent medicines. Without wasting any time, the old man begins preparing the herbs into a medicinal concoction. Ruoro, noticing Yfan's injured hand, questions him about it with concern. Embarrassed, Yifan recalls how he injured his hand back on Earth, hastily trying to close a door during a moment of confusion. He assures Roruo it's nothing serious, downplaying the incident with a sheepish grin. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Roruo scolds her uncle for not resting as instructed, only to be reassured that his legs have healed miraculously thanks to Ifan's intervention. Curious about Ifan's whereabouts, Roruo reveals that he went hunting for additional nutrients needed for the injured. She adds that he insisted on going alone, which worries her slightly. Meanwhile, deep in the wilderness, Ifan finds himself locked in combat with a giant snake. Undeterred by the serpent's constricting coils, he employs his newfound martial arts prowess. With a swift strike from the Shadow Fist technique, the snake retaliates, but Ifan remains unfazed, anticipating its every move. As the battle reaches its climax, Ifan manipulates the snake's movements, leading it to exhaust itself. With a final explosive strike, the snake is vanquished, and Ifan retrieves its heart, a valuable resource in this mystical world. Ifan felt the tension in the air as masked figures surrounded him, their intentions unclear. He calmly assessed the situation, his senses heightened from his recent training in battles. "I don't need to know who sent you," Ifan said coolly, eyeing each masked assailant cautiously. "But if you've come to challenge me, be prepared." The leader of the group, a burly man with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "You're quite perceptive," he grunted, "but it doesn't change anything. We're here for you." Posed, his stance unwavering as he pressed down with deliberate pressure on the man beneath his foot. "You have a choice," Ifan stated firmly, his voice cutting through the tension. "Give me the information willingly, and I'll spare your life and offer double the payment for your client's contract. Refuse, and I will end this here and now." The masked man grimaced, feeling the weight and determination in Ifan's words. I can't," the masked man muttered. The guy from the assassin sect remained resolute, stating that their professionals wouldn't be swayed by bribery. However, when the protagonist showed something shiny and asked if they were absolutely sure about their decision, the assassins reconsidered. They acknowledged that if the price offered became irresistible, they might consider it. Ultimately, they kneeled and assured the protagonist that no other assassin in Luoyun City would dare to take a contract against him. As for revealing the client's identity, they insisted that Yifan would have to wait until their mission was completed to find out. Yifan inwardly resolved that regardless of the client's identity, if they pursued him, they would face dire consequences. With these concerns weighing on his mind, Yifan decided he needed to acquire more martial arts techniques. Advancing to the blood transfusion realm seemed essential for him to navigate Luoyun City without fear. The following day, Lan and Yunka strolled through the city, where Lan vented her frustration about Nalan stirring up trouble among the... She was bad-mouthing Nalan, claiming he turned the peasants against her. Yunka intervened, urging her not to harbor resentment towards Nalan. He then presented her with the last golden hairpin from the pavilion, explaining someone had patiently awaited its acquisition. Ignoring his gesture, Lan declared her intention to splurge that day. Back in the pavilion hall, the protagonist approached Nalan for more martial arts techniques, surprising her since he had recently purchased a fist technique. Nalan questioned his sudden interest, but the protagonist brushed off concerns, jesting about his abundant wealth. Hearing this, Nalan mentioned she had items to sell, noting coincidentally that new high-level techniques had been acquired for auction. She revealed a top-tier yellow-rank technique, floating flower steps, a physical martial art. Suddenly, Lan burst in, startled to find the protagonist present. In a fit of anger, she threw a shoe at Yunka, disparaging him as useless. Lan confronted him about his unkept promise to eliminate the protagonist, questioning how he was still alive and walking freely in the pavilion. Yunka, bewildered by the failure of the professional assassins he hired to eliminate the protagonist, expressed disbelief. Meanwhile, the protagonist turned to Nalan and requested to be informed of any high-level technique she acquires, vowing to purchase them all before they reach auction. Interrupting the conversation, Lan derided the protagonist's bold talk, mocking his humble origins. She declared her intent to outbid him for anything he shows interest in, offering triple the amount without hesitation. Nalan apologized but upheld the rule: the highest bidder prevails. Shocked at the notion of the protagonist outbidding her, Lan questioned Nalan's seriousness and proclaimed that if he could indeed afford it, she would publicly kneel before him. The protagonist, unfazed, questioned her sincerity. With confidence, Lan asserted her unwavering resolve, citing witnesses to her vow. She laughed triumphantly, predicting the protagonist would soon grovel at her feet. Yet, to everyone's astonishment, the protagonist produced a black card and handed it to Nalan. The onlookers gasped, recognizing it as the prestigious Imperial Cloud Order of the Pavilion. The Imperial Cloud Order, a rare token reserved for distinguished buyers of the pavilion, conferred unparalleled status upon its holder. Its possession granted direct access to coveted treasures from other merchant houses without the need for auctions, a privilege so exclusive that few possessed it. As murmurs of astonishment rippled through the crowd, speculation swirled about the protagonist's background and the unprecedented respect he commanded from the pavilion. However, the truth behind the protagonist's acquisition of the card was far more straightforward. Days earlier, after completing treatment for Yan at the pavilion, Nalan had implored him to sell her some herbs. Reminding her of an outstanding debt, the protagonist exchanged the coveted black card for the herbs. Lan, incredulous at the revelation, couldn't fathom how the protagonist came to possess such a prestigious item, comparable to that held by her own father, the city lord. Seeing Lan's disbelief, the protagonist approached her calmly. He asserted confidently that regardless of her offers, whether triple, 30-fold, 300-fold, or even 3,000-fold, he could surpass them. Leaning in closer, he challenged her to exceed his bid, or else she could begin crawling. Meanwhile, Yunka frantically searched for Lan, inquiring among the crowd until a passerby pointed him in the right direction. He discovered Lan in a humiliating situation, crawling on the ground while bystanders jeered. Yunka arrived just in time to witness his sister's degradation. Lan seethed with humiliation, feeling it was the worst she had ever experienced. The protagonist calmly countered her, asserting that if she thought he could be intimidated, she was mistaken. With measured resolve, he knelt briefly, explaining he disliked trouble but wasn't afraid of it either. Taking her hairpin, he warned that further offense would lead to consequences like this. As he turned to leave, remarking on the entertainment of the spectacle, Yunka arrived and hurried to his sister's side. She abruptly changed her stance, declaring she no longer wanted to kill Yifan but instead sought to make his life a living hell. Yunka, catching on, confirmed Yifan was Bai Yifan, and Lan affirmed it emphatically. She erupted, accusing Yifan of humiliating her and threatening Yunka that their marriage would be off unless he helped her. Yunka, incensed, revealed that Yifan was the elusive figure who had stolen his mountain-moving and celestial ascension techniques a month earlier. Lan struggled to comprehend, prompting Yunka to explain that he had planned to acquire the Celestial Ascension Order at auction to help her gain entry to the sacred realm for cultivation. However, Yifan had intercepted it during the process. Yunka had dispatched men to pursue Yifan, but he had evaded them with his skill and stealthy movement. Since then, they had heard nothing of his whereabouts. Lan grew anxious, realizing the depth of mystery surrounding Yifan's background. Back on Earth, in a small district, Yifan lounged on his bed, reflecting on the floating flower steps he had recently acquired. The technique, originally complex with 108 variations, had been simplified using principles from Earth, allowing him to master all variations in a single night. Combining the agility of the floating flower step with the strength of the shadow fist, Yifan felt confident he could easily confront someone at the peak stage of blood transfusion. He decided to go out and purchase cultivation supplies. As he opened the door, he was greeted by Miss Yao. Yifan apologized, explaining he had been resting and hadn't heard her knock. However, she was furious, reminding him it was payday and he hadn't paid the full rent as promised by the end of the month. Yifan handed over part of the amount owed, promising to pay the remaining 200 yuan next month. Yao seized his collar, demanding an explanation. Despite earning some money from delivering food, Yifan admitted he only made around 300 yuan a month. She scolded him for being healthy yet unable to pay rent. Yifan smiled wryly, explaining he spent most of his time cultivating in another world and only returned at night to earn what little he could. Yao returned his money, insisting he couldn't continue living like this. She handed the money back to him for now, but warned sternly that he must pay in full next month. Yifan thanked Miss Yao for her understanding and left to make deliveries on his motorcycle. He felt despondent, lamenting how in the other world he could live without financial worries, yet back on Earth, he returned to his dismal reality. Thoughts of risking his life for money through life insurance briefly crossed his mind, but he quickly dismissed it as potentially criminal. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was his father. Concerned, Yifan answered, and his father delivered distressing news. His mother had been in an accident caused by a drunk driver. The driver was apprehended, but the family lacked insurance. Yifan's father, visibly distraught, explained he had already borrowed from the bank and sought help from friends and relatives, but the upcoming treatment cost 300,000 yuan, with uncertain prospects for her recovery. In tears, Yifan's father blamed himself for failing the family. Yifan comforted him, insisting they were family and he would find a way to cover the remaining treatment costs. After reassuring his father, Yifan left the hospital room, already on his way out. His father called after him, but Yifan continued without stopping. As he walked down the street, Yifan contemplated the unfairness of life, recalling the saying that a hemp rope always breaks at its weakest point, and how misfortune seemed to target the poor and downtrodden. Suddenly, he heard screams. A group of men were attempting to abduct a girl. Without hesitation, Yifan sprang into action, leaping in to kick one of the assailants away. The girl caught only a blur as he intervened swiftly. The protagonist's swift kick shattered the man's leg mid-stride, sending him crashing to the ground. His companions hesitated, realizing their mistake. They had underestimated the protagonist. Dodging a retaliatory swing, the protagonist countered with a precise blow to the man's jaw. Despite feeling his cultivation wasn't fully adapted to Earth, his trained instincts and muscle memory guided every move flawlessly. "You're too slow," the protagonist remarked calmly to the stunned assailants. The last standing thug marveled at how the protagonist had incapacitated 7 of them in less than 3 minutes. Before he could react, the protagonist closed the distance in an instant, delivering a decisive strike that left the man unable to retaliate. Defeated and resigned, the remaining assailant knew fighting back was futile. With only the girl left standing, the protagonist turned to her and urged her to leave quickly. She implored him to escort her home, but he regretfully declined, citing his urgent delivery job which, if delayed, would cost him his pay. When she offered 1,000,000 yuan to ensure her safe return, the protagonist discarded his shirt and asked for her address. Soon, he arrived at the Tang family's villa. The girl assured him she would inform her family of her safety. Inside the villa, chaos erupted as a woman shouted angrily at security guards, threatening them with retribution. Rong, her eyes brimming with tears, called out from the back, catching her sister's attention. Just then, the protagonist arrived and greeted the woman. Rong immediately rushed to her sister, clinging tightly and vowing not to run away again. The protagonist felt relieved to see everything resolved. Soon after, the 3 of them sat down for tea and conversation. The woman expressed profound gratitude to the protagonist for saving her sister's life. She offered to host a banquet in his honor, but the protagonist politely declined, suggesting it was unnecessary. He mentioned Rong's promise of a reward, but quickly dismissed it, stating he didn't expect or need any compensation for doing what was right. However, the woman suddenly turned on Rong, incredulously asking if she had promised 1,000,000 yuan. The protagonist quickly interjected, trying to defuse the tension, saying it was not a big deal and shouldn't be taken seriously. Yet, the woman continued, berating Rong for possibly undermining her own sister's worth and dignity. Realizing the awkwardness of the situation, the protagonist reflected that money wasn't everything, especially when it came to matters of justice and morality. He decided to let the matter drop, reaffirming that his actions were driven by principle, not reward. The woman from the Tang family insisted on giving the protagonist 100,000,000 yuan as a token of appreciation. She confirmed that she belonged to the Tang family with a stock market value exceeding 50 billion yuan. Despite the generous offer, she remarked that the sum was still insufficient compared to what he had done for Rome. She assured him that if he ever needed anything in the future, he only had to ask. In response, the protagonist promptly mentioned something he wanted her to do for him. 3 days later, at a hospital in Hang City, Yifan and Tang engaged in conversation. She reassured him, stating that she had arranged everything necessary for his mother's treatment. The top 5 specialists in the field were already working on her case, and Tang was confident that his mother would recover soon. Continuing, Tang empathized with the protagonist, sharing that she too understood the pain of losing relatives, leaving only her younger sister. She emphasized her commitment to protecting Rong under any circumstance. Yifan expressed his gratitude, offering his assistance in return for any future favors she might need. Unexpectedly, Tang declared they didn't need to wait for the future, immediately requesting the protagonist to train her guards. To his surprise, a group of people appeared behind him, addressing him as their boss. Caught off guard, Yifan questioned whether he had time for this additional responsibility. Tang explained that her intuition about the attackers targeting Rong had been correct, underscoring the urgency of bolstering their security. They soon discovered that the attackers were hired by one of Tang's business rivals intent on using Rong to undermine the Tang group. What surprised Tang was that the professional fighters the protagonist had subdued were still hospitalized, seemingly suffering from psychological trauma induced by their defeat. Impressed by the protagonist's combat prowess, Tang requested him to impart his skills to her guards for enhancement. The protagonist smiled, explaining that effective training required both practice and technique. Tang assured him she wouldn't take much of his time. Half a month should suffice, and promised generous compensation. The protagonist quipped that Tang truly had a business mind, leaving him no reason to refuse. Yifan agreed to do his best but cautioned that success wasn't guaranteed. Tang accepted, organizing the training schedule to minimize interference with his personal life. The protagonist appreciated this, knowing it would afford him time with his family once he completed the task and received payment. For the next half-month, the protagonist dedicated himself to training the Tang family's guards. Meanwhile, at the hospital, his mother finally regained consciousness without complications, responding positively to the doctor's treatments. Returning home, the protagonist felt a wave of relief knowing both the training and his mother's recovery were successfully concluded. Entering the other world, Yifan was overwhelmed with shock. The village lay in ruins, consumed by fire and devastation. Frantically, he called out for Muti and Rururu, fearing the worst until Nalan appeared and informed him she had been waiting. Inside the pavilion warehouse, Yifan found the villagers recovering. His relief was short-lived as he noticed the injuries. Muti's right arm was missing, and others had suffered severe losses. Anxious, Yifan asked what had happened, realizing everyone had been maimed in some way. Muti reassured him, saying the loss of a hand was insignificant compared to their survival. Yifan then inquired about Rururu's whereabouts. With a heavy heart, Muti explained she was badly injured and currently being tended to by the old doctor. Meanwhile, Rururu, wrapped in bandages, stared at her reflection in despair, horrified by her burned appearance. Distraught, she cried out that she didn't want treatment, preferring death over living as a disfigured monster. Yifan rushed to her side, gently calming her until she fainted from exhaustion. Assuring her that everything would be better after rest, Yifan remained by Rururu's side, determined to provide comfort and support during this difficult time. Enraged and heartbroken by Rururu's condition, Yifan demanded to know who was responsible. Nalan explained that the perpetrators were from the Lin family, backed by the city lord's mansion. She lamented how such a tragedy had befallen Rururu, once a beautiful and innocent child, now grievously burned with little healthy skin left. Yifan's fury intensified at the mention of the Lin family and the city lord's involvement. He vowed to exact justice for Rururu and the village. Meanwhile, in the city lord's mansion, Yunka sought favor with the lord using spirit stones. Impressed, the lord entertained Yunka's flattery until Lan, filled with rage, confronted Yunka about his failure to harm Yifan as promised. The city lord, intrigued by Yifan's sudden appearance and rumored prowess, acknowledged his unpredictable strength. He recounted how Yifan had bested assassins, earning their loyalty. This revelation frustrated Lan further, reminded of her humiliation at the pavilion. Her father, amused by her plight, informed her of his plan to dispatch soldiers and cavalry to massacre the Mu family's village. Yunka, aware of the grim outcome, counted the missing bodies, confirming over 10 villagers were unaccounted for. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on Yifan as he realized the extent of the violence and suffering inflicted upon his people. She didn't know exactly where these people were. They might have been rescued by someone. The Lord told Yunka to put up wanted posters in the city to find the missing people in Yifan. Nalin finished recounting what had happened. She said she had some connections in Luyun City, and when she discovered this, she sent some men to help. Unfortunately, the Lin family was quicker, and by the time she arrived, it was too late. They started helping everyone who was still alive. Roruo was hiding inside a rice pot, but she also suffered severe burns due to the surrounding fire. The protagonist thanked Nalan and said he would never forget this favor. Nalan asked what the protagonist planned to do now. He replied that he would kill them all. She shouted at him that it was impossible, as there were cultivators at the blood transfusion realm in the Lords, and the Lord himself was at the 5th stage of the marrow cleansing realm. There were rumors that he had a high-level arcane weapon, but the protagonist didn't care. He said he didn't like killing people, but if they insisted on killing his friends and loved ones, he would show no mercy. The protagonist said that even if the Lord was at the 5th stage of the marrow cleansing realm, he would still be able to kill him. But before leaving, the protagonist asked for one more favor. Back on Earth, Yifan wasted no time. He visited a pharmacy and purchased a substantial amount of herbs and remedies for burns. The clerk, curious about the large purchase, asked Yifan about it, but he brushed off the question, preferring not to elaborate. His demeanor struck the clerk as somewhat unusual, but Yifan left without further explanation. Later, at the airport, Yifan joined his parents. His father expressed concern, asking if Yifan wanted to accompany them, even suggesting a worry-free trip to the Maldives with the remaining funds on the card. Yifan, however, politely declined, reassuring them not to worry about him. He insisted that they go and enjoy themselves, emphasizing that he was now an adult with his own challenges to face. As night fell, Yao's phone buzzed with notifications. Surprised by the late-night messages, she discovered they were from Yifan. He informed her that he had resolved the rent by paying it in advance directly into her account. He also assured her that the remaining money should cover future rent payments. Grateful for her support, Yifan expressed his appreciation for everything she had done for him. Yao felt relieved that Yifan had not misunderstood her intentions and was glad to hear he had found a stable job, allowing him to pay rent in advance. Back in the other world, Yifan had returned with a special herb and presented it to the old man, seeking assurance of its efficacy. The old man, recognizing the herb, assured Yifan that it was indeed potent and would not fail. He marveled at how Yifan had acquired such legendary medicinal herbs so quickly, herbs rumored to be as rare as gods and dragons, unseen and unattainable elsewhere in the world. Yifan explained that obtaining the herbs had been challenging due to the weight limit imposed by the ring, necessitating multiple trips. Nalan inquired if the medicine was prepared. Yifan handed it over, instructing her to administer it. Roruo, hopeful yet uncertain, asked if the medicine could restore her to her former self. Yifan reassured her that once she was healed, he would ensure she had beautiful dresses to wear. 15 minutes later, Roruo let out a scream and dropped the mirror. Yifan rushed to her side, alarmed by the noise. To his amazement, Roruo stood radiant before him, her entire body restored to perfect health. She exclaimed with joy, noting that she even appeared to have grown 6 years older. Apologizing for breaking the mirror in her excitement, Roruo was overwhelmed with gratitude for Yifan's intervention and the miraculous recovery. Roruo had dropped the mirror in surprise, causing a brief scare. The old man, concerned, approached her quickly to ensure everything was all right. Yifan reassured him that Roruo was fine and remarked that she looked even more beautiful than before. He pondered aloud if the herb not only healed but also enhanced beauty and accelerated aging. Nalan marveled at Yifan's possession of so many worldly treasures in the form of rare herbs, prompting her to wonder about his origins. Yifan approached her gratefully, presenting the dragon tail flower as a token of appreciation. He then made another request, to access all the high-level martial arts techniques she possessed and to secure a suitable training location as soon as possible. Meanwhile, at a rural mountain property, Yifan was deeply engrossed in training. He consumed high-grade beast blood for sustenance, yet he found it insufficient. Determined to improve further, Yifan acknowledged that he was still a whole realm behind the marrow-cleansing realm. Despite this, he persisted, continuing his rigorous regimen. Yifan executed the flaming in-slash technique, cleaving through trees and stones effortlessly. Unsatisfied, he drank more beast blood and unleashed the technique again, striving for perfection. For him, however, it still wasn't adequate. His determination to catch up to the city lord's prowess drove him relentlessly onward. As the days passed in relentless training, Yifan found himself pushing harder than ever before. The old man inquired about how many martial arts techniques Nalan had imparted to him, remarking on Yifan's seemingly insatiable thirst for demon beast blood. Nalan, seasoned in the world of martial arts, advised against questioning such matters and suggested going with the flow instead. Yifan's training regimen became relentless. During the afternoon, he immersed himself in mastering the Storm Rain's word technique. As night fell, he switched to refining the Silver Moon slash. Day after day, he persisted, his determination unyielding. Sweating profusely, he cut down mountains and trees with each stroke of his blade. Finally, after much toil and dedication, Yifan achieved a breakthrough, advancing to the blood transfusion realm. This marked a significant milestone in his quest for strength and justice, driven by a resolve forged through hardship and perseverance. Nalan arrived, calling out to Yifan, praising his remarkable strength for advancing to the last realm of blood transfusion in just half a month. Yifan thanked Nalan for her support over the past days and shared his imminent plans with her. He cautioned Nalan that if he didn't return by the next day, she should escort Yueo, Mui, and the others to safety away from the city. Nalan deferred discussion on this, presenting Yifan with a box as a gift. Curious, Yifan opened it, prompting Nalan to explain its contents. A wild talisman to boost maximum strength and a protection talisman against high-intensity attacks, each effective for half an incense stick's duration, ideal for battle. Additionally, Nalen presented Yifan with Shark's Cut, one of the Yin dynasty's top 10 swords, known for its protective properties. She had arranged its transfer from another branch of the pavilion for Yifan's use. Grateful for her efforts, Yifan insisted on compensating her fairly for the sword, but Nalen respectfully declined. She expressed deep respect for Yifan's dedication to seeking revenge for the Mu family, emphasizing that she, Nalen Rual, was personally invested in supporting him. She bowed, pledging to await his triumphant return. Yifan thanked her once more for her kindness, promising never to forget it. In a swift and intense sequence, Yifan arrived at the Lin family mansion where guards challenged his presence. Disregarding their queries, Yifan effortlessly dispatched them, proclaiming his intent to eradicate those who stood in his way. Inside, Yunka informed his father, Lin Dafu, of his upcoming marriage to Lan, confident that it would secure the Lin family's dominance over Liyun City. Impressed, Lin Dafu praised Yunka's accomplishments just as a guard was hurled through the door. Yunka, rising with authority, demanded to know who dared disrupt their mansion. Yifan calmly announced his presence and Yunka, feigning amusement, declared his long-awaited opportunity to capture Yifan for punishment by Lan. Without hesitation, Yunka attempted a swift attack but found himself immobilized by Yifan's grip. Yifan nonchalantly questioned Yunka's ability to capture him alone, swiftly breaking Yunka's arm with a single strike. Yunka, writhing in pain, incredulously remarked on Yifan's speed in reaching the blood transfusion stage. Yifan, undeterred, warned he would break Yunka's legs next. With a powerful kick, Yifan twisted Yunka's leg, sending him crashing in agony to the ground. Lin Dafu, stunned by the sudden turn of events, witnessed Yunka's desperate plea to flee to the city lord. But before he could move, Yifan intercepted him, seizing Lin Dafu by the neck and asserting that escape was no longer an option. In a tense confrontation, Lin Dafu pleaded with Yifan, urging him not to kill them all. He explained that their actions against the Mu family were carried out under orders from the city lord. Killing them would incur the city lord's wrath, especially since Yunka and Lan were considered siblings by law due to their engagement. Yunka echoed his father's plea, warning Yifan that harming them would provoke the city lord into seeking revenge. However, Yifan remained resolute, swiftly breaking Lin Dafu's neck and discarding his lifeless body, shocking Yunka. Unmoved by Yunka's offers of the Lin family's wealth and properties, Yifan mocked the idea, questioning the true value of the Lin family's riches compared to the worth of a single medicinal herb he could easily obtain. He taunted Yunka, making it clear he had no interest in the Lin family's assets. As Yunka pleaded for forgiveness, admitting his errors, Yifan coldly stated there was no need to apologize to him. Instead, he instructed Yunka to accompany his father and atone for the deaths of the Mu family villagers. With a swift twist, Yifan ended Yunka's life, declaring his next destination, the city lord's mansion. Meanwhile, at the city lord's mansion, a messenger rushed in, reporting a grave and unexpected development. A message arrived at the city lord's mansion, reporting that the Lin family mansion was under attack by a man named Yifan seeking revenge, who had already caused numerous casualties. Upon hearing Yifan's name, the city lord immediately ordered all exits of Liyun City to be sealed off. He commanded Generals Pong and Yulei to gather 300 armed guards and accompany him to the Lin family mansion. As the city lord prepared to depart, he pondered how Yifan could still be alive. Mounting his horse, he instructed his companions, Yuan and Bing, to remain at the mansion and protect his daughter, Lan. They were to report any trouble immediately. Yuan and Bing acknowledged the orders and assured the city lord they would fulfill their duties. Accompanied by his guards, the city lord set off towards the Lin family mansion. Meanwhile, Lan returned and inquired of Bing and Yuan about the commotion with her father and the troops. Bing explained they were heading to apprehend a criminal, clarifying that they were staying behind to safeguard her as per her father's orders. Lan disembarked from her carriage, instructing the guards to remain outside but be ready to intervene if necessary. She commented on her father's excessive worry, noting the presence of 4 generals in the city, all in the blood transfusion realm, alongside her father, who was in the marrow cleansing realm. Lan, filled with apprehension over the audacity of the attacker targeting her mansion, likened them to a fearless bear or leopard. Amidst this tension, one of her maidservants inquired about which dress Lan wished to wear that day. Lan noticed a dress identical to one Ruoruo had worn previously and demanded to know why it was still there. The maidservant explained it was considered valuable, but Lan scorned its presence, feeling it inappropriate since Ruoruo, in her view, was unworthy of such attire. She expressed disgust towards the Mu family and declared her intent to personally kill Yifan upon their next encounter. Suddenly, Lan's maidservants collapsed to the ground. Startled, she turned around to find Yifan standing behind her, questioning how she planned to kill him. Terrified, Lan demanded to know why he was there and how he dared to enter the Lord's mansion. Yifan retorted defiantly, disregarding the mansion's status and revealing that he had already dealt with the 100 guards and 2 generals in the blood transfusion realm with his own hands. Lan, overwhelmed with fear and realizing the dire situation, screamed for the guards, only for Yifan to calmly inform her that there was no one left to call. Lan panicked as she realized Yifan had effortlessly dealt with the guards and generals without a peep. Yifan drew his sword and asked Lan if she remembered his warnings not to cross him. Placing the sword at her neck, Yifan questioned whether she and Yunka had plotted the Mu family massacre. He revealed Yunka's fate and declared it was now her turn. Trembling, Lan fell to her knees, pleading she was just 18 and too young to die. She promised to do anything Yifan asked if he spared her life. Yifan's anger flared, especially for the innocent like 13-year-old Ruoruo and the village children Lan's actions had harmed. Lan tried to reason, offering herself and claiming her virginity should spare her. But Yifan dismissed her plea, cutting her arm and stating she disgusted him, clothed or not. Sheathing his sword, Yifan declared justice would be served. Lan would now scrub his shoes until they sparkled, a fitting task given her past arrogance about Ruoruo. She tried to protest, but the protagonist asked if she hadn't said she would do whatever he asked. She agreed. Then she said she would lick, and as long as Yifan didn't kill her, she would do anything. She started licking, and the protagonist said she was working hard to stay alive. She thought she would do anything for a while and delay as much as possible until her father returned, certain that Yifan would face a horrible death. She quickly made the shoe shine. The protagonist looked at her and said now that she had cleaned it, she could go. Then he slashed her throat. She fell to the ground, questioning the protagonist. Outside the Lin mansion, the Lord and the guards were arriving. The Lord sensed something. One of his guards asked if something was wrong. He replied that it was nothing, just a vague bad feeling that came over his heart. Another guard arrived, saying something was wrong. He explained that, as ordered, he had gone ahead to check the place. When he entered the mansion, he found only the guards' bodies, but did not find Dafu or Yunka. The Lord understood what was happening. He shouted to everyone that it was a trap to lure them out of the mansion, and now they must return as quickly as possible. As he ran, the Lord thought that if Yifan touched Lan, he would kill all 9 generations of the Mu family. When he reached the front of his mansion, he saw 3 bodies tied to the gate. Lan, Dafu, and Yunka lay before Yifan, awaiting the return of the enraged city lord. When the lord arrived, he immediately launched an attack at Yifan. Drawing his sword, Yifan retorted that the outcome of their clash was yet to be determined. He unleashed his sword rain technique, but the lord evaded swiftly, recognizing it as the powerful sword rain skill fueled by sword energy. The lord, preparing to counter, recalled the formidable nature of sword rain, a high-level, yellow-ranked sword technique that took him a year to begin mastering. He noted Yifan's disappearance for 2 months and subsequent advancement to the internal force realm, achieving remarkable success. Acknowledging Yifan's capability to eliminate many experts from his mansion, the lord countered with his own skill, the chi technique and blood veil, scoffing at Yifan's audacity to challenge someone in the marrow-cleansing realm while he was merely in the blood transfusion realm. Unfazed, Yifan unleashed another skill, Tempest, filling the sky with water blades that shocked the lord. As the water blades closed in, one aimed for the lord's head, only to be blocked by his 9 clouds ring shield. Assessing the situation, Yifan realized the shield was impenetrable just as an intensely powerful lightning bolt surged from the lord's hand. In the midst of their intense battle, Yifan quickly recognized the lord's magical weapon as he launched a lightning bolt with incredible speed. Employing the floating flower steps technique, Yifan effortlessly dodged the attack. However, the lord wasted no time and struck again, this time hitting Yifan squarely. Amidst his laughter, the lord taunted Yifan to try running if he wished to escape. But as the dust settled, Yifan stood in the center, completely unscathed, much to the lord's confusion. Yifan calmly remarked that he had worried needlessly, as the lord's lightning and thunder abilities weren't as potent as feared. Realizing the talisman given to him by Na Lin was absorbing the lightning and thunder, Yifan understood its effectiveness. He then activated the brutal buffalo talisman, enhancing both his magical and physical capabilities beyond their previous limits, much to the lord's growing desperation. Undeterred, Yifan unleashed the violent sword rain technique's third form, the waterfall of swords. A powerful wave surged from his sword, but the Lord persisted and launched another lightning attack. The collisions between their attacks created a powerful tornado that threw the Lord backward, intensifying the confrontation. The protagonist grimaced as blood trickled from his lips, catching the Lord's attention, who chuckled, mocking Yifan's inability to match his strength even with the talisman. However, Yifan retorted, questioning why the Lord assumed he intended to rely solely on strength to defeat him. The Lord grew uneasy, sensing Yifan still held an undisclosed advantage. Suddenly, Yifan swiftly closed the distance, surprising the Lord, and revealed it wasn't about holding an ace up his sleeve. It was about executing a final move. A small water blade from the violent sword rain technique pierced the Lord's chest, inflicting severe damage known as the sword drop. Shocked and disbelieving, the Lord realized he was defeated by the protagonist. Gasping in disbelief, the Lord couldn't fathom his loss. Meanwhile, Yifan prepared to deliver the final blow, declaring that the heavens demanded retribution for the injustices committed, sealing the Lord's fate with a decisive strike. As the Lord fell, Yifan noticed the magical ring on the ground, reflecting on its incredible power to harness lightning. Picking up the ring, Yifan marveled at how such immense power could be contained within its small form. Moments later, several horses arrived carrying the Lord's guards, who were shocked to find their Lord, his daughter, and their clan members dead. Standing before them, Yifan raised his voice for all to hear. Those who surrender will not be killed, but those who disobey will be killed without mercy. These words struck fear into the hearts of the guards who witnessed the aftermath of the battle. Meanwhile, at the pavilion, Nalan expressed her concern to the old man about Yifan's well-being since he had left. Suddenly, a guard rushed in, urging Nalan to follow him immediately because something significant had occurred. Curious and anxious, Nalan asked what had happened. The guard relayed the shocking news. Dafu, Yunka, and the entire Lin family had been slain. Furthermore, the city lord, Lan, and all 4 generals had also met their end. Adding to the devastation, the Lord's mansion had been completely destroyed in a fire the previous night. Overwhelmed with relief and disbelief, Nalan fainted, grateful that Yifan had indeed succeeded in his mission. The old man pondered the implications of these events. He remarked that the 4 great generals, all in the blood transfusion realm, were formidable opponents capable of challenging someone in the intermediate stage of the marrow cleansing realm. Yifan, who had only recently advanced to the internal force realm, had achieved a remarkable feat. He speculated that Luoyun City's future would undergo significant changes. Days later, a commotion erupted near the wanted posters as people discussed Yifan's newfound status as a criminal. Rumors spread that capturing him would reward 100 gold coins, while providing information about him would yield 50 coins. Despite the bounty, some observed that Yifan's demeanor didn't match that of a typical criminal involved in nefarious deeds. Suddenly, someone grabbed the wanted poster featuring the protagonist himself. Yifan couldn't help but notice how poorly his face was depicted, but he shrugged it off and moved on, seeking new adventures elsewhere. As night fell at the pavilion, Nalan pondered Yifan's current whereabouts and his future plans. Unexpectedly, a letter flew through the window, accompanied by a small box. Nalan picked up the letter and read it attentively. It was a farewell letter from Yifan, expressing gratitude for her care and friendship during their time together. He explained that he would soon depart from Luoyun City. The brocade box contained divine treasures, a generous gift for Nalan and the Mu family, ensuring their well-being for a lifetime. Touched by the gesture, Nalan opened the box to find exquisite treasures she had never imagined seeing. She silently hoped for a reunion with Yifan someday. Meanwhile, Yifan rode away with his horse. Half a month later, at a boat port on the border between the Wei and Yin nations, Yifan overheard someone mentioning that the sacred land of the 5 elements, one of the 10 great sacred lands, had recently opened slots for recruiting disciples. Even the lowest technique in the sacred land, once it goes to the secular world, becomes a supreme technique that anyone would fight to obtain. Another person said that if someone became a disciple there, it would be considered a divine blessing. The man in blue said that if someone could become an elder of the sacred land, even the princess, nobles, and the emperor himself would have to show respect. The man in red said that the sacred land was 10,000 miles away, and if they missed the ship, they would never get there, not even using 20 horses to death. The man in blue urged them to hurry to get the best seats. Yifan looked up and saw several ships flying in the sky. Cloud ships were the most important method of transportation on the ancestral continent. They were extremely fast for crossing the celestial rift valley and reaching their destination. The protagonist didn't waste any time and got in line. When it was his turn, he asked for a ticket to the land of the five elements. The ticket seller said the ship only went to the five elements city of the Wei Kingdom, and that it cost 500 gold coins per ticket. The ticket seller wondered where a country bumpkin like Yifan came from, not knowing how far the ship could go. Besides, accommodations on the ship were very expensive, with even the basic room costing 300 gold per night. He told the protagonist that if Yifan couldn't pay for it, he would have to sleep on the deck, without any magic protection from the wind and sun. The protagonist wasted no time and requested the most luxurious room available. The ticket seller, delighted, assured him of preparing the finest accommodations. Just then, two individuals approached and insisted the ticket seller hold off, offering to pay double for the same room. The young woman introduced herself as Meng, the princess of Lingyang, and the man as Tang, son of Prince Kong. Yifan, feeling indignant, confronted Tang, questioning his audacity. Tang retorted that in their world, those who could afford it paid a premium, regardless of who came first. However, Yifan asserted his precedence, backed by the ticket seller's confirmation that he had secured the reservation first. Meng interjected, questioning Yifan's standing to oppose the prince of the Kong family. She enumerated her titles and emphasized her authority as Wang Meng, appointed by King Yin as the princess of Lingyang. Her brother, Wang Tang, was the eldest son of Prince Kong. She insinuated generosity in merely engaging with Yifan, accusing him of daring to covet what she desired. Meng challenged Yifan, asking if he sought his demise. The protagonist, taken aback, lamented encountering pretentious individuals wherever he went, flaunting their titles and expecting deference. Onlookers in the line advised Yifan to yield, cautioning against provoking trouble with the royal family. Losing patience, Yifan retorted loudly that being royalty did not inherently confer greater entitlement than anyone else present. Meng and Tang were taken aback by the protagonist's boldness, who firmly stated that he had already purchased the room and wouldn't relinquish it for any sum of money. He insisted they should obey and move to the back of the line. The tension between them escalated, prompting the ticket seller to intervene. He suggested Tang go to the end of the line and assured him of the second-best room once his turn came. The ticket seller found himself in a precarious situation, torn between the influence of royalty and the wealth of Tang. He couldn't afford to offend either party. Tang, as a last warning, asked Yifan if he understood the consequences of opposing the prince of the Kong family. In response, Yifan countered by asking if Tang understood the consequences of crossing him. Tang cautioned Yifan about making enemies while traveling abroad, hinting at the dangers that might befall him. Yifan acknowledged the risk but suggested it was equally uncertain who posed a greater threat. Feeling pressured, Tang relented, deciding not to argue further and accepting the second-best room. Meng, however, remained displeased. Tang reassured her, promising to buy her dresses when they reached the city to lift her spirits, to which she reluctantly agreed. The ticket seller, relieved to resolve the situation, assured he would prepare the rooms accordingly. However, Yifan unexpectedly declared that he wouldn't accept this arrangement. Tang demanded to know what he meant, and Yifan explained that he disliked noise from neighboring rooms when sleeping, so he intended to secure all the premium rooms. This declaration angered the prince, who confronted Yifan, asking what he was trying to achieve. Yifan simply reiterated his stance on first come, first served, and challenged Tang if he had an issue with that. Seeing the resolve in Yifan, the ticket seller handed over all the room keys to him and requested Prince Tang to return to the end of the line. The ticket seller anticipated a substantial windfall from this transaction, enough to secure his financial future. Yifan departed with all the keys, but on his way, he spontaneously gave one to a bald man nearby, simply because he appeared quiet and unassuming. Meng criticized Yifan's actions as an attempt to embarrass them, but Tang, resigned to Yifan's obstinacy, understood his motives. On board the ship, Yifan strolled down the corridor when a burly man intercepted him, requesting a moment of his time. They eventually sat down together, chatting and sharing drinks. They raised their glasses once more in a toast. The burly man expressed agreement with Yifan's earlier sentiment about princes not being inherently superior to others. Despite their conviviality, Yifan remained unaware of the man's identity. The big guy introduced himself as Lu, from a merchant family in the Wu nation. Lu asked about the protagonist as well. Yifan introduced himself and said he came from the Yin continent. The protagonist thought that the Wu continent was neighboring the Yin continent, and that since most people there were martial artists, the overall strength of that continent was considerably stronger than that of the Yin continent. Lu said it was destiny that they met there today, because he had witnessed the protagonist's act of bravery and admired his personality. Therefore, Lu wished to be friends with the protagonist. Lu said he wasn't afraid to admit that his journey was to participate in the admission exam for the Sacred Land. If those two people, Tang and Ming, dared to take revenge on the protagonist, he would be the first not to spare them. Tonight, he would stand guard so that the protagonist could sleep peacefully. Yifan thought, when did he ever say he was worried about such a thing? The big guy decided to toast once more. An hour later, the big guy was completely drunk when suddenly a lightning bolt almost hit the ship. Even though it didn't strike directly, the ship became very unstable and the big guy went flying. The protagonist wondered what was happening. People on the ship were being thrown around by the force of the wind. A lightning storm was approaching. Another lightning bolt struck the ship and everyone nearby screamed for help. Yifan saw the lightning and thought it was a good way to gather energy. He took out the thundercloud ring and said it was time for it to shine. He remembered that while on the way there, he had examined the ring thoroughly, and the magical weapon could store lightning during storms and release it when necessary. Unfortunately, he hadn't encountered any storms in recent weeks. Yifan said that now a storm had arrived just in time. A lightning bolt struck and went directly to the ring, exactly what the protagonist wanted. Then several lightning bolts struck, all heading towards the protagonist. People noticed that all the lightning bolts were going in the same direction towards the cabins, but clearly aiming at the protagonist's cabin. One of the workers saw this and wondered if the protagonist cabin, which was of divine grade, didn't have a protection formation. As the lightning was heading there, while everything outside was flying around, the protagonist was calmly absorbing the lightning until the ring absorbed everything and the lightning stopped. Now with this, the protagonist had another ace up his sleeve. After some time, one of the crew members spotted the city of 5 elements. The big guy Lu thanked heaven for finally getting off that ship, and the protagonist asked if this was the city where the entrance exam for the Sacred Land would take place. Lu, with a swollen forehead from the impact, said he had heard that King Wei had spent a tremendous amount of money to build this city to appease the 5 elements sect of the Sacred Land, and this city was much more luxurious than the King's city. The protagonist thought it was much better to see for himself than to hear it from someone else. So, he headed into the heart of the city. Now, in the middle of the city, a lot of people surrounded him. He thought there were many more people than he had imagined. Lu explained to him that this was the admission exam for the Sacred Land, and that thousands of martial artists from all over the world came here to take the exam. So naturally, there would be many people here. Lu asked Yifan to look at the sky, and there were people flying on swords and gourds. The big guy said that they were cultivators from the mystic spiritual cultivation realm. He mentioned that this was the 5th time he had seen a cultivator from the mystic spirit realm with his own eyes. Yifan thought that the spirit cultivation realm was different from the external release of qi and blood. They could generate spiritual energy with their own bodies, so they could fly in the sky and escape the earth, travel around on swords, and do whatever they wanted, and this was truly the Sacred Land. And the protagonist had indeed come to the right place. Suddenly a person shouted for everyone to be silent. An immense pressure came from the sky, and everyone started to feel unwell. The protagonist, not wanting to draw attention, pretended to feel unwell too, until a giant person appeared in the sky. Yun Yunsong, the elder of the inner hall of the 5 elements Sacred Land, announced himself as the examiner for the admission exam. He instructed aspiring cultivators to head to the eastern part of the city at noon to register for the disciple evaluation test, their gateway to entering the Sacred Land. Excited by the opportunity, everyone hurried to register upon hearing the announcement. Lu approached the protagonist and declared his intention to participate. Encouraging Lu to give his best, the protagonist assured him of waiting. The protagonist's companion, the big guy, expressed regret for being unable to protect them presently but advised hiding if fear struck, believing they might not meet again. Undeterred, the protagonist, holding the Celestial Ascension Order, held hope of a reunion with Lu soon. At the martial arts arena on the eastern side, candidates lined up for registration. Noticing the protagonist ahead, Tang and Ming were surprised to see them planning to take the admission exam. Tang queried about the protagonist's intentions, while Ming impatiently inquired when the prince planned to settle scores with Yifan. The prince assured her to focus on their current tasks and promised that once they became official disciples of the 5 elements Sacred Land sect, they would avenge their past humiliations with Yifan's life. Finally, it was Yifan's turn to introduce himself as a cultivator in the blood transfusion realm. Observing from behind, Tang doubted the protagonist's suitability for the competition, given his status in the blood transfusion realm. He expressed concern that even if the protagonist passed, he might struggle to remain safe amidst other participants. Meanwhile, the protagonist proudly displayed the Celestial Ascension Order, a gesture that was instantly recognized by those present. With a smile, The observer declared the protagonist exempt from the examination and instructed Yifan to step aside briefly. This revelation stunned Ting and his brother, prompting Tang to question the protagonist's background. Shortly after, Yun-song, perched atop a nearby building, inquired about the identity of the individual with the Celestial Ascension Order. The observer identified the protagonist as Yifan, explaining that they had tested him with a spirit measuring tablet, revealing his qualification at the lowest yellow rank level. The observer suggested that Yifan was merely a wealthy youth fortunate enough to possess the Celestial Ascension Order. Yun-song deliberated on what to do with Yifan, noting that the minimum requirement for an outer disciple of the Sacred Land included a level 5 physical body and status in the marrow cleansing realm, criteria Yifan did not meet, being in the blood transfusion realm with the lowest yellow rank qualification. Nevertheless, due to the Celestial Ascension Order, Yun-song decided to grant Yifan an opportunity to prove himself. Later, aboard a giant bird, Yifan and the other participants were transported to another location. Reflecting on his journey, the protagonist marveled at barely meeting the qualifications for becoming an outer disciple. Despite his origins from Earth, Yifan's qualification remained at the yellow rank. Despite having surpassed several realms in strength, Yifan chose not to dwell on it, finding the qualification assessment inexplicable. Resigned to his lower rankings, he resolved to sustain himself with Earth's abundant resources and streamline his learning of techniques to accelerate his progress. Meanwhile, aboard the flying bird racing through the skies, they swiftly reached the Five Elements Sacred Land. Yifan marveled at the sight of the Sacred Land floating among the clouds. Suddenly, Yun-song clarified that this was the Five Elements Sacred Palace, the heart of the Sacred Land, accessible only to inner sect elders and true disciples without special permission. Inside the palace, everyone would commence their cultivation journey. Upon arrival, they lined up to hear Yun-song's address. He declared them all outer disciples of the Five Elements Sacred Land, emphasizing that their conduct must align with sect rules and prioritize the sect's interests in all endeavors. Yun-song distributed jade identity plaques and maps to their respective rooms, each containing a sect manual for study. He urged everyone to familiarize themselves with the rules and guidelines. Each disciple affirmed their commitment to the elder's instructions. Later, in the disciples' resting area, Yifan relaxed in his assigned quarters. In his quarters, Yifan discovered 3 talismans, a body purification talisman, one for quick movement, and another for water collection. Alongside them were spiritual stones and high-level healing pills. He marveled at the generosity of the Sacred Land sect. The combined value of these items easily surpassed 10 million gold. Becoming an outer disciple had brought him these riches without exception. Delving into the sect manual, Yifan learned about the ancient Great Hope continent, which was divided into 5 regions: Eastern River, Southern Desert, Western Sea, Northern Plains, and Central Plains. These lands were inhabited by 3 races: humans, demons, and monsters, knowledge Yifan was already familiar with. The human race's 10 sacred lands were named as follows: Immortal Sacred Land, Supreme Imperial Sacred Land, Five Elements Sacred Land, Great Ice Sacred Land, Martial Truth Sacred Land, Heavenly Slayer Sacred Land, Celestial Scripture Sacred Land, Great Treasures Sacred Land, Purple Phoenix Sacred Land, and Ethereal Sacred Land. Among these, the Ethereal Sacred Land stood out as the most mysterious, known for admitting only 5 disciples, each a world-renowned talent. Occupying the continent's central region, the Supreme Imperial Sacred Land boasted the strongest heritage and power, displaying dominance across the land. Other sacred lands such as Martial Truth focused on body refinement, while Heavenly Slayer specialized in sword cultivation. The Great Ice Sacred Land exclusively accepted female disciples, contrasting with the Five Elements Sacred Land, which was the youngest among the 10 and divided into factions: gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Upon discovering that the Supreme Imperial Sacred Land was the strongest among the sacred lands, the protagonist lamented not knowing this earlier, regretting that he hadn't found a way to join its ranks. Reflecting, he acknowledged that even with endless wealth to hire bodyguards, true strength was the only defense against those who would covet his possessions. He resolved to strengthen himself independently to forge his path to greatness. Yifan recalled the realms of bone forging, internal strength, and blood transfusion, which all focused on body cultivation. However, the marrow cleansing realm stood out for purifying the body of impurities and refining the purity of chi and blood. Determined, the protagonist sought ways to cleanse his marrow, purify his body, and enhance the purity of his vital energy and blood. Curious if Earth had anything to offer, he spent a month traveling between worlds. During this time, he discovered that using spiritual medicine in a medicinal bath proved more effective and stable than consuming it directly. Ingredients like Angelica sinensis, lotus seed, asparagus, and barley, recommended by the traditional medicine hall, helped purify body heat and detoxify toxins. As a result, Yifan felt lighter, stronger, and mentally sharper. With relentless cultivation, he sensed himself breaking through the constraints of the blood transfusion realm. His efforts intensified until he achieved the marrow-cleansing realm, accompanied by a stylish cloak, the Cloak of Blood and Qi. Comparing it to the City Lord's cloak, Yifan recognized its brightness, density, and strength, akin to a Qi and blood cloak of someone in the illumination realm. Energized by his newfound strength, Yifan decided to test its extent. He threw a punch into the air, and the sheer pressure from the blow toppled several trees. Astonished, he realized that not only was the Cloak of Blood and Qi formidable, but his punch alone carried an estimated force of 20,000 to 30,000 kilograms, double the strength expected of someone in the marrow-cleansing realm. Motivated by this revelation, Yifan resolved to continue cultivating with even greater fervor. Sometime later, all the disciples gathered in the sect affairs hall of the Five Elements Sacred Land. This hall served as the administrative hub where disciples managed sect affairs, received allowances, and undertook missions. Here, disciples could voluntarily take on missions ranging from small tasks to major undertakings, earning resources for their cultivation in exchange for contribution points. Contribution points were displayed on each disciple's jade identity plaque, with every new disciple starting with 50 points. The most coveted use of these points was exchanging them for martial techniques at the Martial Arts Pavilion, a repository rumored to house dozens to thousands of manuals. Acquiring one of these manuals could exponentially enhance a practitioner's strength in their chosen art. According to the Ancient Hope Manual, contribution points could be earned through 3 tiers of missions. Low-level missions were tailored for disciples in the marrow-cleansing realm, offering rewards ranging from 100 to 300 contribution points. Intermediate-level missions, suitable for those in the illumination realm, promised rewards of 300 to 1,000 contribution points. High-level missions were reserved for disciples in the divine body realm, offering rewards ranging from 1,000 to 1,500 contribution points. Another method to earn points was by presenting divine treasures directly to the sect. However, the most lucrative but perilous option was capturing and eliminating criminals listed on the Five Elements Sacred Land's wanted list. This method not only yielded the highest points, but was also the quickest. Yet, those who made it onto this list were notorious and dangerous individuals within the Sacred Land. Each year, a few daring disciples attempted to apprehend them on their own, but none returned. Reflecting on the risks and relatively low rewards offered by the sect, Yifan deemed killing criminals too hazardous. Preferring a safer approach, Yifan saw presenting divine treasures to the sect as the most reliable method. It suited him perfectly. However, he acknowledged that unlike Liyun City, the Five Elements Sacred Land was not a place where wealth and power mixed freely. Frequent presentations of divine treasures might attract unwanted attention from treasure hunters. Although Yifan was unafraid of trouble, to avoid unnecessary complications, he opted to disguise himself, undertake sect missions, and opportunistically collect divine treasures along the way. Seeking to start, Yifan approached an elder for a low-level mission. Soon after, while disciples were leisurely strolling in the courtyard, they encountered a bully demanding their spiritual stones. Accompanying the bully were Tang and 2 others, with Tang praising the bully's wisdom and introducing him as Gao. The prince suggested that by blocking the way on allowance day, they could effortlessly acquire the spiritual stones. Gao, however, expressed confusion at Tang's words, claiming that everyone willingly handed over their stones out of admiration for him. Approaching a trembling disciple, the bully Gao questioned if the others agreed with Tang's claim. Fearfully, the disciple affirmed, asking if they could leave as it was getting late. Gao, however, lashed out and asserted his dominance, declaring he decided when they could leave. Concerned disciples checked on the frightened individual while Tang suddenly noticed someone approaching. The protagonist, Yifan. Displeased by Yifan's presence, Gao asked if Ting knew him. Tang stepped forward, recounting how Yifan had humiliated him a few days prior during their journey on the cloud boat. Although unsure of Yifan's background, Tang had discovered that he was extraordinarily wealthy. He had meticulously investigated, learning that Yifan was the only blood transfusion realm cultivator allowed into the sacred lands using the Celestial Ascension Order on Selection Day. Understanding the implications of owning such an expensive item, Gao deduced Yifan must possess many valuable belongings. Meanwhile, Yifan pondered that displaying a valuable treasure could make him a target for those with ill intentions. Recognizing his current strength was insufficient, He resolved that a weak man should never reveal all his cards at once and should trust no one easily. Suddenly, Gao approached Yifan and requested something from him. When asked what he needed, Gao leaned in and demanded Yifan's spiritual stones. Concerned disciples whispered that trouble was brewing. Gao was notorious for picking fights with weaker disciples, and few could evade his fists. Advised by onlookers to hand over his spiritual stones and avoid trouble with Gao, the protagonist smiled confidently. He calmly stated that if Gao wanted his stones, he would have to kneel and beg. This bold declaration shocked everyone present. Enraged, the bully lunged at the protagonist, but Yifan effortlessly dodged his attack. Confusion spread among the disciples as they marveled at Yifan's speed and tongue. Realizing Yifan had evaded a peak marrow-cleansing realm cultivator like Gao, acknowledged the protagonist's unexpected strength. Gao, fuming with anger, demanded if Yifan dared to repeat his challenge. Unfazed, Yifan questioned why he wouldn't dare, proposing that for every time Gao knelt, he would receive a spiritual stone, with an extra stone for every 10 kneels. He then provocatively asked Gao how many times he was willing to kneel. Infuriated, Gao lunged forward again. But before he could strike, someone intervened, threatening to report them to the elders if they didn't cease their quarrel. The mediator was Lu. Approaching Yifan, Lu questioned why he was there and if he had deceived him. Yifan calmly reminded Lu that he never asked about his destination during their boat journey. Interrupting their exchange, Gao shouted at Yifan to stop ignoring him. Yifan pushed aside the big guy, promising to address him later. Raising his hand, Yifan admitted he had momentarily forgotten about Gao. Grabbing Gao by the neck, he warned of breaking his face if he continued his disruptive behavior. Struggling to speak, Gao found himself at Yifan's mercy. Tong, astonished by the scene unfolding, listened as Yifan admonished Gao for his lack of virtue as a martial artist, particularly for attacking unexpectedly from behind. The other disciples stood in disbelief as Gao found himself overpowered by the newcomer. Lu attempted to intervene, but Yifan's grip was firm, and Gao was left foaming at the mouth. Expressing disappointment, Yifan mentioned he had intended to resolve things amicably and offer Gao the spiritual stones. With Gao incapacitated, Yifan proposed an alternative. If Gao could apologize sincerely, Yifan would forgive him. Yet, seeing Gao's condition, Yifan doubted his ability to uphold any semblance of honor. Instead, he decided on a different approach. Curious, Gao asked what Yifan intended to do next. Struggling to speak, Gao remained unable to open his mouth. Yifan queried if Gao was too embarrassed to apologize, suggesting in that case, he would accept the spiritual stones as thanks for Gao's generosity. With a decisive throw, Yifan sent Gao tumbling away, unconscious upon hitting the ground. Concerned colleagues rushed to his aid, questioning his well-being. Yifan then handed several bags of spiritual stones to two individuals, instructing them to return them to their rightful owners. Grateful, they inquired if Yifan wanted to keep any stones for himself. Yifan declined, stating there were still 3 troublemakers he had yet to deal with. Shortly after, the trio of troublemakers found themselves kneeling before Yifan, offering their possessions in repentance. Yifan directed them to leave the stones on the ground and depart. As they rolled away, one jested about their rolling posture, to which Yifan casually remarked it wasn't bad. Observing from a distance, Tang remarked that Yifan would eventually receive his due respect. It was only a matter of time. Feeling a presence behind him, the protagonist turned but found nothing there. Lu approached him, expressing admiration for his strength and admitting his earlier misjudgment aboard the cloud boat. He felt ashamed for promising protection to someone so capable. The protagonist assured Lu that he hadn't harmed Gao. Concerned, Lu asked if the protagonist feared Gao returning with others for revenge. With a calm demeanor, the protagonist remarked that someone like Gao, who relied on bullying, would likely keep his defeat to himself. Revealing his loss to a newcomer would only further tarnish his honor. Assertively, the protagonist declared that if Gao attempted any future tricks, he, Bai Yifan, would meet them with decisive force. Impressed by his resolve, Lu changed the subject, informing the protagonist of a mission involving himself and 3 comrades, still needing one more member. Curious, the protagonist inquired about the mission's nature. Lu explained it was a low-level mission focused on apprehending Yang Shizong, a suspected traitor collaborating with the demon race on the southern border of the Wei Kingdom. Yang Shizong was accused of treason, using innocent people's blood for martial arts practices. This mission promised a decent reward of 60 contribution points each upon successful capture and evidence gathering. Pleased with the offer, the protagonist agreed it was a favorable deal for a low-level mission yielding 300 points in total. Lu then introduced the protagonist to the other team members. Inside were senior brothers Lu, Zhang, and Shun, familiar faces who often crossed paths during the week. Lu introduced Yifan to them, mentioning he had met him on the boat and now resided on Mount Kachu. Yifan greeted them all cordially, but Zhang reacted with skepticism, commenting to Lu that he had hoped for a better addition than this newcomer. Yifan felt a pang of irritation at Zhang's dismissive tone. Zhang continued, pointing out that Yifan, exempt from the exam due to the Celestial Ascension Order, only held a low-level yellow rank. He questioned Lu's judgment, insinuating that bringing Yifan could undermine their sect's interests and accusing Lu of sabotage. Lu defended his decision, acknowledging Yifan's modest realm but emphasizing the strength he had witnessed firsthand, which Lu believed wouldn't hinder their mission. Yifan approached Zhang calmly and remarked on his apparent experience, asking if Zhang was well-read. Zhang, misunderstanding, demanded clarification. Yifan quipped that those who spoke carelessly about easily memorized knowledge might end up with more than they bargained for. Zhang, incensed, prompted efforts from others to diffuse the tension, reminding them of the limited time and importance of unity at such a critical juncture. Shin interjected, asserting that their assembled team, regardless of individual strengths, was sufficient. Expressing frustration, Zhang announced his departure, expressing concern over potential blame for the discord. He disparagingly remarked that even the gluttonous Toddy lineage couldn't produce a worthwhile addition. He urged everyone to prepare for departure, leaving Lu visibly annoyed. Curious, Yifan asked what gluttonous meant. Shun elaborated on Lu's Toddy lineage, stemming from the ancient fierce beast Toddy. Those with this lineage required copious amounts of food to fuel their cultivation. The potency of the spiritual energy within their diet directly influenced their cultivation speed. However, this advantage came with the drawback of immense resource consumption compared to peers. Lu acknowledged the practicality of the sacred land elders, who preferred distributing resources among many cultivators rather than focusing heavily on one. Shin jokingly interrupted Zhang to keep him quiet, while Lu, though slightly embarrassed by the topic, appreciated the opportunity as an outer disciple. He pledged diligence in earning his own cultivation resources, emphasizing that Zhang and Shun would stand by him regardless of his cultivation progress. Lu's remarks prompted a mild rebuke from Shun for speaking too freely. Meanwhile, the protagonist pondered Lu's resource needs, contrasting them with his own abundant supplies from Earth. Yifan contemplated the potential to elevate Lu's cultivation significantly, yet hesitated due to their developing friendship and the complexities of explaining his vast resources. Lu, noted for his sense of justice and worthiness as a friend, had earned the protagonist's respect, yet Yifan remained cautious, observing him a while longer. Later, at the border of the Wei Kingdom, the group gathered around a portrait of Shizong, the target of their mission. Intelligence indicated Shizong was in the intermediate realm of marrow cleansing, with 4 commanders under him who were at the peak of the blood transfusion realm. The most daunting challenge was Shizong's ability to mobilize 300,000 elite soldiers. Lu expressed disbelief at the scale of Shizong's forces. Yifan realized that even defeating the 4 commanders would be difficult with a direct approach, let alone facing such a vast army. He suggested stealth as the only viable strategy. Zhang concurred, adding that intelligence suggested Shizong was collaborating with the demon race, using captured civilians to cultivate forbidden blood arts. The severity of Shizong's crimes meant they needed concrete evidence to avoid a potential revolt. Zhang emphasized the importance of capturing Shizong alive for interrogation, but acknowledged that if conclusive evidence couldn't be obtained, they would have to bring back his body. Positioned discreetly near Shizong's mansion, the protagonist's group prepared to execute their mission covertly. Zhang instructed everyone to activate their chi concealment talismans, rendering them practically invisible as they swiftly bypassed the guards outside. Inside the city, their next task was to locate the old man, Shizong. Shin soon spotted him returning home, accompanied by a conversation with a woman about his military duties. As night fell, the woman expressed loneliness, mentioning she wouldn't feel as isolated if the silly one were present. Shizong comforted her and left for another location. The group cautiously followed, concerned they might have been detected, but Shizong continued without suspicion. He entered another house and manipulated a vase, revealing a hidden passage to an underground palace within the mansion. Impressed by the hidden mechanism, Zhang suggested they wait until Shizong entered before proceeding with their plan. After he disappeared into the underground palace, Shun inquired about their next move, asking if they should follow Shizong further. Zhang takes the lead and instructs everyone to enter the secret room. As they descend the stairs, they find themselves in a vast, dimly lit hall. Yifan urges the group to stay close and remain vigilant. The protagonist is immediately struck by a pungent smell. Zhang, recognizing it instantly, identifies it as the scent of blood, confirming their suspicions. This old man is truly practicing the demonic blood art, Zhang murmurs. Suddenly, Shun spots something in the shadows. Her eyes widen as she sees several pools of blood and scattered bones. She shudders at the thought of how many lives this old man has taken. The air is thick with demonic energy, and it's clear that the old man is refining the bodies for his dark rituals. We'll surround him, Zhang instructs. Wait for my signal, then we attack simultaneously. But before they can act, the old man's voice booms through the hall. Now that you're here, there's no need to hide, he shouts. In an instant, he unleashes a lightning bolt towards the group. They barely manage to dodge in time. How did he detect us? Zhang exclaims. With a sneer, the old man, Shizhong, replies, You brats think you can sneak into my mansion undetected? Are you looking for death? And with that, we conclude this chapter. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button. Let's aim for 200 likes on this video. Drop a comment below saying Part 4 if you're excited for the next installment. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for your incredible support. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to stay updated. Now, let's delve into our story. Man, that was a total trap. The old guy tricked them into going down there, and then bam, the door slams shut. He starts yelling about how everyone is going to be his sacrifice. Zhang and Lu charge ahead, and Shan and Lu want to join in, but our protagonist tells them to hang back for a sec. All of a sudden, the demons break free and attack the group. Zhang is freaking out because these demons are crazy fast. The protagonist pulls Shun and Lu out of the way, making the demons miss their attack. He quickly realizes these aren't just regular bodies. They're the bodies of demon kings. Lu gets hit in the chest but tries to stay alert, while Zhang is fighting like his life depends on it, which it does. Everyone is facing off now. Shin checks on Lu, who says he can hang in there a bit longer. Zhang yells at the old man, promising he's going to die for what he's done. Yifan figures out that these demons are actually demonic puppets, made from people who died and are now being controlled with some evil magic. These demonic puppets are super creepy. They use the bodies of living people as sacrifices and keep all their memories and powers, getting even stronger through cultivation. There are 4 of these puppets, plus the old man, and a super strong puppet still tied up. Things are looking rough for our protagonist. The old man orders the demons to kill everyone, and the fight kicks off again. Zhang slices a demon's neck and thinks he's won, but the old man laughs and uses magic to heal it instantly. Everyone's totally floored by what just happened. Lu's like, we can't keep burning through our energy like this. Zhang tells the crew to hold off the puppets while he goes after the old man. He pulls out a talisman, saying that if he takes down the old guy, the puppets will stop. A powerful sword bursts out of the talisman and flies straight for the old man. But Shizhong just grabs the sword with his hand, asking if Zhang's the top cultivator among them. He throws the sword back and says Zhang needs to eat a lot more beans if he wants to fight him. The sword smacks Zhang right in the forehead, and he realizes their intel was way off. The old man's in the realm of enlightenment. Lu is freaking out, thinking if Zhang, their strongest fighter, is struggling, they're all doomed. Shizhong orders the demons to throw everyone into the blood pools. The group's thinking they're done for. But then, Yifan uses his floating flower steps and reaches Shizhong. Our protagonist makes a swift move and slices off the old man's arm. Zhang's totally confused about what just happened. Shizhong screams in pain but bounces back, yelling that he's going to kill the protagonist. But then the protagonist busts out another move, the violent rain sword technique, second form, Storm. The old man recognizes it and tries to throw up a blood shield, but it doesn't help. Every strike hits him perfectly. All the puppets suddenly stop moving, and the old man is left beaten and unable to fight. The protagonist tells him to give up because there's no way he's winning this. The fat man is stunned, and Shan is super impressed by the protagonist's power. Shizhong's shaking all over, totally in shock that Yifan managed to hurt him with just a yellow-ranked sword technique. He thinks to himself, this is what you'd expect from a sacred land disciple. But then the old man snaps. He starts ranting about how everyone's destined to die today. Yifan's on high alert as the growth puppet gets unleashed. The group sees the protagonist in serious danger and can't believe Shizong managed to refine a puppet at the peak of the Enlightenment realm. Yifan yells for everyone to get out, and they barely dodge at the last second. The growth puppet is foaming with rage. They hide behind a pillar, and Lu tries to wake the old man, but he's already dead. The growth puppet's losing control fast. Yifan shouts that it's coming, realizing the puppet's striking randomly, following just the sound. He tells everyone to hide and stay quiet. They hide again, and Shin asks Zhang what they should do now. Zhang says they should escape because they can't take down the growth puppet on their own. But the protagonist disagrees, saying fleeing isn't an option. If they leave the puppet free, it'll result in the deaths of hundreds of innocent people. They need to end this now. Zhang gets angry and tells Yifan to shut up, insisting that they should leave quickly and call for reinforcements. Lu stands by Yifan, saying he's not going alone. Lu's going with him. Zhang asks what Lu means by that. Lu points out that they need to think carefully about whether they can really escape and how long it would take for reinforcements to arrive. The fastest backup could get there is about an hour, and by then, the growth puppet would have wiped out everyone within hundreds of miles. Lu stands tall and says he's not afraid to die. He'd rather fight this demon than let innocent people die to save himself. Shun and Lu are on board, ready to fight too. Zhang argues that it's just a death wish. The protagonist gets frustrated and asks how they can protect their nation and families if they run away in a crisis. If they won't risk their lives, they can't do anything for their country or loved ones. He explains that the world is safe because people know they might die but still do their duty. That's why there's peace. Zhang, irritated, shouts, asking who's supposed to be in charge. This commotion catches the growth puppet's attention and it charges at them. Lu draws his sword, ready to fight. But the protagonist steps up with his floating flower steps. Zhang yells that the demon's in the realm of enlightenment and Yifan won't even scratch it. But the protagonist is serious and puts on his thundercloud ring. He releases a lightning bolt at the puppet and asks, "Who's the idiot now?" The bolt hits the puppet square in the chest, sending it flying. With just one strike, the protagonist defeats the growth puppet in the realm of enlightenment. The group is blown away by his power. The protagonist declares that only he decides whether he can harm his opponent or not. The puppet starts crying and calling for the general and Susu, saying it has no regrets. The protagonist notices that the demon still has some humanity left. He knows that demonic puppets usually have their humanity erased to make them easier to control, so seeing one with humanity still intact and obedient to its master means the person probably chose to become a puppet. The protagonist is puzzled by this. Lu is stunned that the puppet was really destroyed, while Zhang, from the back, insists it's impossible. He notices the protagonist used a magic weapon and asks where he got it, but the protagonist says it's one of his trump cards, so he kept it a secret. The protagonist goes near the pool and notices something off about the blood. Shin asks what's wrong, and Yifan says the blood doesn't seem human but beast blood. Lu mentions the intel said Shizong is a demon and wonders how he could use beast blood. Suddenly, the palace starts collapsing. The protagonist shouts for everyone to get out as fast as possible. A pillar falls towards the group, but suddenly a barrier protects them. Lu asks who's doing that, and a woman named Xiao Chai appears, saying she's glad she wasn't too late. She asks if everyone's okay. Lu recognizes her and is happy to see her. Yifan asks if she's using spiritual energy. Xiao Chai remarks that it's a miracle they're still alive after facing a demon puppet at the peak of the Enlightenment realm. She adds that she'll put in a good word for them, which will make them famous for a while. Suddenly, another pillar starts to fall towards her, but she snaps her fingers and evaporates it entirely. Even the protagonist is impressed by Xiao Chai. As she approaches, everyone thanks her for saving them. She goes up to the protagonist and asks if he's Yifan. She comments that it's impressive he managed to kill the growth puppet despite being only at the mid-stage of the marrow-cleansing realm. The protagonist humbly says he was just lucky. She smiles and mentions she heard everything he said, noting it's rare for an outer disciple to have such great understanding. Meanwhile, Zhang thinks the protagonist won because of his powerful magic weapon. He rummages through the old man's body and finds a rare magical storage ring. Just as he finds it, Xiao Chai takes the ring from him, saying it was the old man's best treasure, and praises Zhang for his sharp eye. She tosses the ring to the protagonist, saying that since Yifan killed the general, the old man's treasures belong to him. Yifan is thrilled and thanks her, knowing that a magical storage treasure is priceless in the outside world. He thinks it'll be perfect for when he returns to the contribution hall to give divine treasures and herbs from the earth. Zhang is fuming with anger at the protagonist. Xiao Chai then says the general was quite pitiful. His family had been loyal for generations, guarding the borders for the Wei royal family and protecting the people. He was a rare and good general. His only daughter, Susu, fell in love with one of the commanders under the old man's command but was forced by the king of Wei to marry for peace with the barbarians. As a result, Susu was tortured to death, and her father sought revenge by working with demons to create a puppet for attacking the Wei royal family. The group recalls Lady Yang mentioning that if Susu were there, she might not feel so lonely. Lu now understands the significance of her words. Xiao Chai points out that the scars on the old man's body are from battles he led with his soldiers. The protagonist recalls the demon puppet saying it had no regrets. He then realizes the puppet was actually the commander Susu loved. Zhang starts kicking Shizong, saying the old man doesn't deserve sympathy. He feels it was a waste coming there for nothing. Seeing this, the protagonist kicks a stone that hits Zhang's leg hard. Zhang asks what Yifan's doing. The protagonist explains Shizong is already dead, and they shouldn't take out their anger on him. Zhang asks what they'll do with the body. Yifan says he'll take it to Lady Yang and explain everything. Zhang insists they need to cut off the old man's head for the mission's sake. The protagonist turns and firmly states he'll only say this once. The body must stay intact for Lady Yang. Zhang questions if the protagonist is serious, and the protagonist tells him to stop. Xiao Chai then gives Zhang a tiger amulet, explaining it will validate their mission since the old man used it to command his troops. For a general, this item is more important than life itself and will clarify everything. Xiao Chai agrees with Yifan, while Zhang begrudgingly admits the protagonist is a scoundrel. Sometime later at the old man's grave, the protagonist reveals Lady Yang already knows everything. Shen asks if she's okay with it, and Xiao Chai explains that Lady Yang had foreseen all of this. She believes the old man can now find peace reunited with his daughter in the afterlife, liberated from the cycle of cause and effect. Lady Yang plans to devote herself to Buddha, chanting scriptures to bring salvation and help lost souls find happiness and quicker reincarnation. Afterward, the protagonist calls everyone to leave. Before departing, Shen asks Xiao Chai how she found them. She reveals she came with senior brother Zhang to assist in slaying a demon king, although she's not yet strong enough for such tasks. Zhang asked her to capture some of the demon king's underlings. While passing by the general's mansion, she sensed demonic energy. Everyone is surprised by her admission of weakness. Shen asks if this Zhang is from the sacred land. Xiao Chai confirms it, adding that Zhang is known as the Eastern spiritual flower among the 5 true disciples. Curious, the protagonist asks about sacred maidens and the 5 true disciples. Shen chides him for his ignorance, explaining that the 5 true disciples are the top talents from the factions of the 5 elements in the sacred land. They were personally trained by the leaders of their respective factions and are the true heirs of the sacred land's elemental techniques. Among them are Eastern Spirit Song, Southern Sword Essence, Western Myriad Sounds, Northern Flying Tiger, and Central Divine Dragon. Senior Sister Jiang, known as Eastern Spirit Song, is the youngest and most talented among these disciples, acclaimed as the top beauty in the sacred land of the 5 elements, earning her the title of Sacred Maiden. Xiao Chai asks if they'd like to witness her beauty firsthand. Meanwhile, where Zhang is engaged, the battle rages fiercely. Disciples attack from one side while the formidable demon King of Great Sorrow strikes from the other, mocking them as mere foot soldiers and generals unworthy of his attention. He derides the sacred land, questioning if they're so desperate as to send a girl to confront him on the front lines. Jiang boldly asserts she can handle him alone. From a distance, the protagonist's group watches helplessly, Xiao Chai noting their lower realm levels make intervention impossible. The protagonist senses the overwhelming aura of the Demon King and wonders if this indeed is the fearsome foe. In the midst of the clash, the Demon King curses Zhang, proclaiming Zhang's imminent demise. At Zhang's command, disciples initiate the formation of the Divine Dragon Lock. They concentrate intently as branches converge to ensnare the Demon King, who recognizes the technique and struggles furiously against the magical confinement. Despite his defiance, the disciples labor to contain him within the confines of the cube. Zhang clarified that she wasn't attempting to trap him. Suddenly, she summoned a flock of golden crows, stunning the king with their unexpected appearance and potent energy. Yifan observed their emergence, noting the intense energy they radiated out of nowhere. With precision, Zhang explained she had created an opening to unleash her technique. A colossal crow materialized before the king, its command from Zhang clear: to consume the demon. Without hesitation, the crow engulfed the cube containing the king. Despite his defiant cries, the king stood no chance against the divine flames of the crow, which consumed his very existence. In a blaze of divine extinction fire, the demon king met his end. Yet, the moment was not without its consequences. Zhang's technique triggered a massive explosion, prompting the other disciples to shield themselves. Zhang marveled at the sheer power of the blast, feeling its searing heat even from a great distance. The protagonist's group, witnessing the swift annihilation of the formidable demon king, wondered if this was the true might of a top disciple. Approaching Zhang, a group inquired about her well-being. Assured she was unharmed, Zhang queried if they had cleared the battlefield, receiving a confirming nod. Xiao Chai elucidated that Zhang had employed the heaven and earth technique, reserved for those at the 7th level of spiritual cultivation, the realm of spiritual manifestation. Shun voiced admiration, likening Zhang's prowess to that of celestial beings. Yifan pondered his own potential to someday reach Zhang's level. Zhang, meanwhile, scanned the forest and called out to those hidden within. Xiao Chai remarked that they had been spotted, prompting Zhang to question when Xiao Chai had first noticed them. Addressing Xiao Chai's decision to expose her disciples to danger, Xiao Chai explained it was to broaden their horizons, deepen their understanding of the world, and witness Zhang's heroic deeds. She also praised Yifan for his achievement in defeating a peak enlightenment realm opponent despite being in the marrow cleansing realm. Zhang inquired directly if the protagonist, despite being in the marrow cleansing realm, had indeed defeated someone at the peak of the enlightenment realm. Yifan, feeling a bit bashful, confirmed it. Zhang acknowledged it as impressive, prompting the protagonist to blush and modestly downplay his achievement, feeling unworthy due to his low cultivation level. He struggled to meet Zhang's gaze, and used to such direct attention. From behind, Zhang couldn't resist mocking, reminding everyone that despite Yifan's prowess, he was still just a practitioner with a yellow rank. Shun intervened, playfully scolding Zhang for his envy and stepping on his foot to silence him. Zhang, intrigued by the conversation, asked the protagonist to confirm his yellow rank status. With a nod, the protagonist admitted his qualification. Zhang expressed surprise, considering the high value placed on qualifications in the sacred land of the 5 elements, and wondered how someone with seemingly low talent had managed to impress the sacred maiden. To Zhang's surprise, Xiao Chai clarified that even the sacred lord of the ethereal sacred land possessed a yellow qualification, emphasizing that qualification alone did not define one's potential. Many individuals with modest qualifications achieved remarkable cultivation levels on the ancient Hope continent. As Zhang prepared to leave, she encouraged the protagonist to work diligently. Should he advance to the realm of mystical spirit cultivation in the future, she promised to recommend him to join the Wood faction, her own faction alongside Xiao Chai. Grateful, Yifan thanked Zhang for her generosity, impressing her with the prospect of being recommended by the sacred maiden herself. Envy flared within Zhang, realizing the prestige and resources such a recommendation could afford the protagonist. Shortly after, Lu called for their departure, reminding them of the need to collect their contribution points before it grew too late. At the contribution hall, the protagonist proudly received his 101 points, considering it a significant achievement for a newcomer in their 6-person division. As they prepared to leave, Zhang remained behind, prompting Shun to discuss the potential for exchanging their points for martial arts techniques. Lu already had one in mind, eager to make use of their newfound resources. However, Zhang suddenly called out to the protagonist, questioning his intention to keep all the rewards from the old man's ring. Yifan affirmed his decision, but Zhang grew visibly angry, declaring he wouldn't allow it. Asserting his role as the group leader, Zhang insisted he had the right to distribute the rewards. Lu immediately objected, criticizing Zhang's sudden change in stance now that Xiao Chai was no longer present. He reminded Zhang that without Yifan's actions, they would have perished in the underground palace. Zhang dismissed this, arguing that he had played his part and deserved a share of the ring. He further accused Yifan of overstepping his authority by giving orders despite Zhang being the mission leader. The tension escalated quickly. The protagonist moved swiftly, slapping Zhang and warning him not to provoke further. Lu tried to intervene, cautioning against impulsiveness, but Yifan was resolute. He continued, knocking Zhang down and asserting that their score wasn't settled from their previous clash in the secret chamber. Yifan agreed to apologize if Zhang knelt to hear it, sparking further resentment from Zhang. Claiming generosity and accepting someone like Yifan into the group, Zhang expressed deep offense at the disrespect shown in the physical altercation. He warned Yifan of unforgivable consequences and retreated behind Shun, threatening revenge. However, the protagonist called Zhang back, prompting a smile from Zhang, who declared he no longer desired anything from the ring. The tense confrontation concluded with unresolved tensions simmering beneath the surface, leaving a palpable rift within the group. The tension at the contribution hall reached its peak as the protagonist, fueled by frustration, delivered another slap to Zhang, sending him sprawling. Shun pleaded for them to cease fighting, but Yifan justified his action by claiming Zhang's twitch provoked him to act against Zhang's misaligned face. Zhang, now seething with anger, threatened to retaliate, but Yifan swiftly pointed his sword at him, declaring he had endured enough. With resolve, Yifan warned Zhang never to cross paths with him again on pain of another beating. As the group moved forward, leaving Zhang simmering on the ground, the other disciples marveled at Yifan's audacity, questioning how a novice could display such arrogance. Leo advised Yifan against impulsiveness, cautioning that the incident might draw the attention of the elders from the contribution hall's law enforcement division. Unperturbed, Yifan produced 3 vials of 4th-grade spiritual beast blood, distributing them among his comrades. Leo recognized the value immediately, explaining that such blood could fetch 10,000 contribution points each, equivalent to a human cultivator in the realm of mystical spiritual energy. Lu confirmed its origin from the old man's storage ring, prompting Shun to ask if Yifan was certain about sharing such precious resources. Yifan insisted that everyone deserved a share for their collective efforts during the mission. However, in a surprising twist, the protagonist revealed that the 4th-grade beast blood was actually leftover from a chicken he had brought from his world. And with that, we conclude this chapter. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button. Let's aim for 200 likes on this video. If you're excited for the next installment, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care. In the previous video, we saw our protagonist beat up the 3rd-grade villain in his group and gift some beast blood to his friend. If you haven't watched the earlier videos in this series, you can find the link in the description. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. In this world, the protagonist has brought forth a remarkable treasure, the blood of a 4th-grade beast. As they examine it, they marvel at its rarity and commend the protagonist for their generosity and kindness. Yifan, recognizing the noble character of these 3 individuals despite their earlier life-or-death struggle with the old man, is moved. He decides to offer even more items to Lu. He explains that, due to Lu's unique lineage, these items will be especially beneficial for his cultivation. Yifan assures Lu that if he needs anything further, he will assist him in acquiring it. Lu, overjoyed, eagerly inquires if he will also receive something beyond the blood. Shin steps in to clarify that what Lu is about to receive is even more valuable. She describes the screaming birds, which are notoriously difficult to capture due to their tendency to alert others of danger and their fierce combat abilities. Extracting their blood is already a challenge, and obtaining their hearts is nearly impossible. Moved by this gesture, Lu runs to the protagonist and embraces him, tears streaming down his face as he expresses his heartfelt gratitude. Yifan, though touched, playfully requests that Lu avoid getting snot on his clothes. Meanwhile, in the contribution hall's law enforcement division, Zhang is venting his frustrations about the protagonist. He accuses Yifan of assaulting him and disobeying orders. Zhang suggests that if the law enforcement division doesn't take action, their reputation will be tarnished. The elder, incredulous, demands that 2 guards find Yifan and bring him in for questioning. The guards set off on their mission, but Zhang follows them, hoping to influence the outcome. He offers them treasures in exchange for teaching Yifan a lesson. However, the guards express reluctance, stating that such small rewards are insufficient for the task. They also remind Zhang that during his test, he will have to consume a truth pill, which could further complicate matters. This is not within their control. Zhang says that since the two of them are powerful, they should be able to manage. He hands over a bit more treasure, saying that this is all he has at the moment. But when he returns to his residence, he will look for more. One of the guards takes the pouch and says it is heavy, asking if Zhang is sure he wants to give it to them. However, Zhang is determined and says that as long as they can teach Yifan a lesson, it will be a fair price. Zhang thinks he cannot let Yifan get away. He bets there are more valuable things in that storage ring. So the guards decide to accept. They show a fake truth pill and say that even if Zhang says nonsense in front of the elder, he won't be punished. Zhang then says he will be in their debt. At the protagonist's house he is cultivating. He thinks that now he should just close his eyes, calm down, hold his hands firmly, meditate, prostrations, and make a cradle with both hands. If he is diligent and not interrupted, all diseases will turn to dust. Suddenly, he uses the blood shield. This shield is the best defensive technique of the human race. It improves as the cultivator's cultivation improves and can defend against powerful attacks or even sudden blows and stealth attacks, making it worth practicing. This is undoubtedly the best item Yifan got from the old man's ring. He says the rest were just some nutritional elixirs. Then he goes to the land to get some fruits and vegetables to exchange at the contribution hall. At this moment, the guards kick down the protagonist's door. He asks who they are and what they want with him. They say they are from the law enforcement unit and inform Yifan that he assaulted someone outside the contribution hall, so he will have to go with them. Zhang thinks that the last thing the protagonist should have done is mess with him. The protagonist agrees and asks the guards to lead the way, as he indeed has to go to the contribution hall. The guard asks what Yifan has to do there. Yifan says that Zhang probably didn't mention it, but he has 4th-grade beast blood to turn into points, and it was precisely when Zhang tried to take it for himself that Yifan hit him. The guard questions Zhang about this, and Zhang asks them not to believe Yifan, as he doesn't know anything about it. Yifan the guard says they will know the whole truth when they take the truth pill. Zhang becomes frustrated at being cornered. He goes to the guards and says that after taking the spoils, he will split half with them, but the guard demands 80% for them, and Zhang. Despite his resentment, Zhang accepts this. The guard tells the protagonist that they must be impartial regarding the laws, and therefore, asks the protagonist to follow them. Yifan understands and, since he just finished training, asks for some time to clean himself up before going to the trial smelling bad. The protagonist asks the guards to go with him, so he can change clothes. The guard tells Yifan not to try anything funny with them. While heading to the protagonist, the guard tells Zhang to stay right there. Inside, one of the guards warns the protagonist again not to do anything, as Yifan is no match for the two guards. The protagonist acknowledges this and says he won't do anything, he will just change clothes calmly. Meanwhile, one of the guards tells the other that the room doesn't seem normal. The spiritual energy there is richer than that of the guards' quarters, who are inner disciples. They notice something on the floor, a carpet made of the divine grass dulu. Not only that, but a fong from a flame dog and a foot towel made from the feathers of the mythical divine beast of the northern region, the northern light golden eagle. They are shocked by this, and wonder how the protagonist obtained such rare treasures. Yifan, already prepared, pretends these are useless items to him. Things he uses daily. He even questions the guards if they are playing a prank on him. The protagonist hands a bag of medicinal bath to the guards and says they can keep it. Upon taking it, they realize these are extremely fine treasures that even the elders would struggle to obtain. One of the guards asks the other if he knows the protagonist's past, because if the protagonist really has all this and treats it as normal things, he must have a powerful background. Therefore, they decide not to offend the protagonist. Outside, Zhang wonders why the guards and the protagonist are taking so long. But shortly after, the guards come out and ask if Zhang waited too long. Zhang sees that the guards have the truth pill in hand and asks what they are trying to do. They respond that they will take him to the law enforcement hall. At the law enforcement hall, everything is clarified. Zhang explained that he wanted to escape the battle zone, take all the treasures for himself, and didn't like how Yifan was acting. So he planned for the protagonist to be punished out of pure revenge. Zhang did all this, and Yifan is completely innocent. Zhang fights back, but the truth pill is very powerful. The elder says there is nothing more to be said. Zhang is not a good leader and blamed the other disciples. Therefore, he will be punished with half salary for a year and 3 months, at the peak of self-reflection. Suddenly Zhang screams, pointing at the two guards. But before he says anything, the two guards slam his head to the ground. The guards inform the elder that they will take Zhang away immediately. The elder speaks to the protagonist and says he was rewarded for exchanging divine treasures. Therefore, the protagonist must go to the front of the hall and receive the 30,000 contribution points. Yifan and 2 others take Zhang away. The guards tell the protagonist that if he ever has any problems in the sacred land of the 5 elements in the future, he should ask for their help, and they will take care of things for him. Yifan says he will call if anything happens. With that, the guards leave with their pockets full, with treasures from both the protagonist and Zhang. Suddenly, a giant bag falls from above and lands on the two. Then, several blows are dealt to the guards. Someone was there in front of them. They take all the guards' treasures and run away. And of course, that person is the protagonist. The next day, at the martial arts pavilion of the sacred land of the 5 elements, the millionaire protagonist was there, asking to buy a peak-grade human martial art, the technique of the demonic bull power. The old man even asks if the protagonist is sure about this, but he is determined and says that is indeed what he wants. The old man warns the protagonist not to waste all his effort, mentioning that this technique costs a large amount of contribution points and is quite difficult to learn. He even asks how the protagonist will manage to comprehend it, but the protagonist asks him not to worry. The old man is shaken and says that since the protagonist does not want to listen to the words of an old elder now, later Yifan will surely suffer a great loss. Yifan takes the technique and thinks that his cultivation has increased, and now he can acquire a new martial art. Sometime later, in the talisman hall of the sacred land of the 5 elements, the protagonist is there pestering another guy, asking for various things. The guy wonders how the protagonist managed to have so many contribution points. At the spiritual weapons pavilion of the sacred land of the 5 elements, the protagonist asks another elder to pack up the weapons from half an entire wall for him. The elder can hardly believe it, but does as the protagonist requested. Yifan takes a sword and sees that it is a good weapon. He thinks it is a good time to buy good equipment. As he was leaving, everyone was talking about him. They said they heard that the protagonist emptied the talisman hall in the spiritual weapons pavilion and even obtained a legendary weapon, the demon-suppressing sword. People wonder how many contribution points Yifan has. And the protagonist leaves there happy. After night falls, at the back of the mountain of the sacred land of the 5 elements, the protagonist is there and thinks that this simplified version of the demonic bull power technique mentions that to practice this technique, it is necessary to try to make the meridians absorb a large amount of blood essence from spiritual beasts of the bull type. Therefore, the protagonist is applying bull blood to his skin. After doing that, he needs to strengthen himself with a massive amount of physical exercise to transform the essence into the martial artist's own strength. Then Yifan throws a stone at the bats. With that, they fly after the protagonist. He uses this to train his reflexes and speed. A bat tries to attack him but is hit in the mouth. The bat is thrown against another bat, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Yifan has barely started and can already feel his meridians burning. With the help of the bull, the protagonist's body has already gained the strength equivalent to 30 horses. Suddenly, the protagonist stops and tests his new ability. He throws a punch that sends a blast against the bats. All are instantly killed. With that, the protagonist successfully masters the demonic bull technique. But at this moment, the protagonist senses a strange energy nearby. At the top of a peak, someone tells a hidden person to come out. The hooded one asks the other, who is hidden, to say what he wants quickly, as he doesn't have much time. Suddenly, a portal appears in the air, and a voice says that it is indeed very difficult to talk to the hooded one and calls him an old friend. This voice continues, saying that the hooded one has been working undercover in the sacred land of the 5 elements for many years and is acting more and more like a human. Suddenly, a demon king emerges from the portal. This is the demon king of the reverse wheel. The king asks if the hooded one has forgotten his identity as the demon king of the eternal hate demon sect. The hooded one shouts, asking the king to stop joking. He asks if the king contacted him using the transmission talisman because of the incident where the great demon king of despair was killed, and what the eternal darkness demon sect intends to do about it. Meanwhile, The protagonist is watching everything and already realizes that there is a demon spy here in the sacred land of the five elements. The king shouts, cursing Zhang, as she has been cornering and attacking the demons more than 100 times since she became a true disciple. Now, even the great demon king of despair lost his life at her hands. Therefore, the king wants to get rid of her as soon as possible to please the demon god. The protagonist wonders who this demon god is. The hooded one asks the king if he wants to kill Zhang. He explains that Zhang is the holy maiden of the sacred land of the five elements, the first true disciple of the wood sect. If the king dares to attack her within the sacred land, it will turn bad for him. He asks if the king is not afraid of provoking another war between humans and demons. The king says that's why he called the hooded one there, because the hooded one will probably have a better idea. The hooded one says that in 3 days, the outer disciples will take a test for the spiritual medicinal garden, and Elder Yunsong will be one of those responsible. But this year, it seems that the responsibility will be given to Jiang. If she makes a mistake there, she will be sent to the Ghost Sorrow Cliff as punishment. The security there is lax, and it would be much easier to make her disappear. The king thinks this is a good idea. He says he will get some spiritual herbs for the occasion, while the hooded one thinks of a way to place them in the valley to attract some elite disciples there. The king asks if it would be a good idea to place a spiritual beast there to kill them all. The hooded one says it is indeed a good idea. As he was leaving, the king says that if all the elite talented disciples of the sacred land of the five elements die, it will be hard for Zhang not to be held responsible for it. Meanwhile, the protagonist was listening to their entire plan. Yifan thinks he has to do something about it quickly, but suddenly the hooded one attacks the protagonist, having seen movement in the forest. The protagonist realizes they sensed his presence. The attack explodes everything where the protagonist was, but no one was there. The hooded one thinks he was being paranoid. He uses a technique to sense the presence of someone within a kilometer area but does not sense anything nearby. So the hooded one decides to leave there as quickly as possible. Shortly after, the protagonist returns to this world. Luckily, he did not use the ring to go to Earth today, as he was almost killed by a hair's breadth. Yifan thinks that the demon race people are trying hard to kill Zhang, and he cannot let that happen. However, the protagonist has no evidence at the moment. If he reports this without thinking it through, he might alert the infiltrated enemy. Also, an outer disciple overheard a conversation between great venerable demons and survived. No one will believe that, but this issue cannot be left alone. The only way now is for Yifan to go to the spiritual medicinal garden personally and investigate this. 3 days later, at the spiritual medicinal garden, several disciples are there. The protagonist and the others arrive there too. Shin sees that there are many people there, and they are all very excited, but this was obvious, because if someone performs well in this test, they will have the opportunity to be recognized by one of the elders, and perhaps even be promoted to an inner disciple. Therefore, everyone is excited. Suddenly, a guy arrives asking everyone to get out of the way. A bearded disciple says that this is Changfeng, and not only him, but also Wang, Xiaojia, Min, and Yuan Bai. Shin explains that these 5 are the best among all the outer disciples, and have already been pre-accepted by the 5 inner courts of the sect. As soon as they advance to the divine mystic spirit realm, they will be immediately admitted to the sect's inner court. Yifan thinks this must be the group the Demon King and the Hooded One were talking about. He asks Shun if she knows anything about the demon race. She explains that the demon race has been hostile to the human race since time immemorial. Unlike their cultivation, which is by realms, demons are simply and roughly divided from top to bottom according to their level of combat power. First comes the Demon God, then Demon Emperor, Venerable Demon, Demon King, Demon Commander, and lastly Demon Soldiers. The Demon God is the supreme leader of the demon race, and he is the only one of his kind. It is said that he is so powerful that no one can escape from him alive, and no one has ever seen his true face. Below the Demon God, there are 7 main demon sects, named Eternal Death Demon Sect, Sun and Moon Demon Sect, Eternal Hate Demon Sect, Shura Demon Sect, Red Lust Demon Sect, White Skeleton Demon Sect, and Shadow Demon Sect. They are all addicted to killing and committing all kinds of evil. They are the greatest threat to the human race. Yifan thinks that this issue is going to be quite troublesome. Suddenly, Zhang arrives and calls for silence. She explains that she will be responsible for this year's test, and asks everyone to follow the rules. All the disciples are impressed by her beauty. Jiang says that she has 3 things to mention. First, the test encourages fighting, but killing is not allowed. Especially disciples of the profound purple realm are not permitted to act against those in the marrow cleansing realm and the illumination realm. Second, the test will last 7 days and no one is allowed to stay behind after the test ends. Third, the collected herbs must be placed in the travel backpack and can only be kept after registration when the test is finished. She continues, saying that if any of the 3 rules are violated, they will be punished according to the sex rules, and with that, the test begins, and everyone heads to the portal. The protagonist and Leo waste no time and enter the portal immediately. Upon entering, the protagonist feels a rich aura around him. He looks around and thinks he entered with his friends, but he is the only one there. The protagonist remembers that Leo mentioned that the spiritual medicinal garden was opened by an ancient ancestor of the sacred land of the 5 elements, with supreme divine power, and it spans hundreds of miles. The deeper one goes, the greater the chances of encountering spiritual herbs. But the demonic beasts inhabiting there are much more dangerous. At that moment, Yifan hears something approaching, and suddenly, 3 giant snakes appear attacking him. He takes his legendary sword and slices the snakes into pieces. These snakes were stone pythons, a grade 4 demonic beast, which could be a problem for a weaker disciple, but for the protagonist, they are no threat. Yifan wonders where the spiritual beast that the Demon King mentioned is, but he decides to forget about it and move forward. Just ahead, he hears someone calling for help. A girl is being cornered by 2 guys. She begs them to leave her alone as they have already taken everything she had. These 2 are Gao and Tang. Gao continues to corner the girl, attempting to do indecent things. Tang urges Gao to hurry up to avoid attracting attention, but Gao invites Tang to join in. Tang thanks him and starts to undress until suddenly a stone hits the heads of both. They wonder who did it, and the protagonist appears with another stone in hand. The girl asks Yifan for help. Gao is already furious with the protagonist. Recalling their, Yifan stares at Gao and says that he is already a defeated man, and now the protagonist is too lazy to beat him again. Yifan tells Gao to leave on his own, or he will break his legs, and Gao will have to crawl out of there. Gao gets angrier and asks the protagonist if he thinks he is the same as before because after losing, Gao cultivated a lot and managed to advance to the peak of the cultivation realm. He attacks the protagonist, but Yifan stops his attack with just 1 finger. Yifan asks if that's all Gao has, and Gao trembles with fear and cannot believe this is possible. He realizes that the protagonist is thousands of times stronger than before. Yifan says he will warn him one last time. If he sees Gao bullying the weaker ones again, he will kill him. Yifan flicks Gao's forehead, sending him flying far away. The protagonist cleans his hand after hitting Gao, as Gao is a disgusting guy. Tung is already in shock and asks what Yifan intends to do. He uses the blood barrier and warns the protagonist that his sister is already an inner disciple and will soon become an elder of the sacred land in the future. Therefore, the protagonist should respect him. But Yifan simply advances and punches Tung, asking if he is threatening him. Lying on the ground, Tung realizes that with just 1 blow, his organs were damaged. And now the protagonist is even more terrifying. The protagonist asks if being an inner disciple is that good. Yifan says he will send Tung to a place to cool his head. The protagonist gives a kick that sends him flying into a lake. He takes the treasures from Gao and Tang and says that now, everything belongs to him. The girl thanks Yifan for saving her. He replies that it was nothing and asks if she is hurt. Yifan hands her some medicinal herbs and asks her to heal her injuries. When she sees them, she immediately recognizes what they are. Rare, mystical, ice spirit grasses. She asks if the protagonist really wants to give them to her, but when the protagonist looks at her, her neckline is quite low. He turns his face out of respect and warns her that a lot is showing. He says that these herbs are common and not useful to him. He needs to find higher level herbs. With this, the chapter ends here. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button as today's like goal is 100 likes. Comment next part down below for the next part. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching. She quickly covers herself and apologizes to him. She informs him that if he wants to find more spiritual herbs, he should follow the Forbidden River, and he can reach the heart of the garden. It's quite simple. Once he crosses the Forbidden River, 7th-level demonic beasts might appear, and with their cultivation, it would be like hitting a stone with an egg. The protagonist thinks about this Forbidden River, and that it could be a trap set by the demons. So he needs to investigate. Further ahead, at the Forbidden River, a celestial blue herb is spotted by some people, and if they can get it, their results will be significant. The protagonist shouts for everyone to be careful, as this is an ambush. The wolf attacks the man, killing him instantly. The disciples wonder what is happening. They can't believe they encountered the wolf just as they entered. This wolf is a 7th level howling wolf. Everyone starts running, trying to escape alive. However, Jin stays and tells everyone not to panic, as the power of a monster at the 7th level is equivalent to that of a human in the deep celestial realm. And since there are several disciples there, they might be able to defeat the wolf. Upon hearing this, the other disciples become courageous and even begin to think about how much they will profit from selling the wolf's items. As for the protagonist, he already knows it's not that simple. The monster's energy is somewhat strange. He knows that monsters differ from spiritual beasts because they have not yet opened their spiritual wisdom. Yifan wonders how this beast has human expressions. Suddenly, the wolf attacks again. Jean, who was at the front, says he is stronger than the previous disciple, so he will be able to defend himself. However, he is cut to pieces. His friend is in shock at seeing this. He can't believe that even Jean, who is at the third level of the Violet Realm, was killed with a single blow. The wolf howls and kills 2 more disciples. Everyone is shocked again and runs to flee. At that moment, the protagonist connects the facts. There are elite disciples, spiritual herbs, and the spiritual beast. So this is the trap set by the demonic sect. And as Yifan can see, the demonic sect planned this very well, so it will be difficult to deal with. Outside, Jiang and other girls are meditating, until suddenly Jiang senses something and thinks something bad is happening. She flies off and asks everyone to prepare quickly. They ask what is happening, but Jiang flies away. Back in the garden, the disciples are hiding behind a rock, wondering what they can do, as this beast can kill them all at once. Min is already dying of fear and says they can't stay there, or they will die. The guy next to her says the beast made them go there but doesn't attack. He wonders if the beast is playing with them. The wolf howls again, and Min asks why the wolf keeps howling. The guy says that the wolf is probably calling more wolves. Min is terrified because it's already hard to escape from the wolf. If more wolves come, it will be a disaster. Yifan thinks that this howl is not to call more wolves but a horde of beasts. And now it's really bad because all the beasts in the valley, plus the wolf, are there. The protagonist remembers that according to rumors, spiritual beasts can match the mysteries of the Transcendence realm, have great intelligence, and can control common monsters to fight for them. Yifan looks at the exit and sees that the wolf has already blocked the exits, and if they don't find a solution quickly, it's likely they will all be killed within an hour. They wonder if there was supposed to be only one 7th level howling wolf, as was explained before. Suddenly Min runs away, screaming that she doesn't want to die and will get out of there. However, the wolf kills her in seconds. Xiao Di falls to the ground, terrified, saying she doesn't want to die there. Meanwhile, Yifan is deep in thought, thinking that even elite disciples lost their composure in this situation. They can't continue like this. Yifan thinks that if he were alone there, he would kill the wolf without difficulties. But now he has to ensure that everyone gets out of there alive. He sees that the wolf is sleeping and seems to want to attract something bigger. The protagonist looks at the sky and sees that there is not much time, and now he can only resort to his cunning, so he decides to act. With this, the chapter ends here. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button as today's like goal is 100 likes. Comment next part down below for the next part. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.